LoveLore Library. Chapter 666. These two words were the most sensitive to little Amo. He, who had been weeding and watering Yun Luofeng's herb field, immediately jumped up, his large bright eyes filled with excitement. Master, you've finally thought it through. It really wasn't easy. Little Amo was so excited that he almost cried. He felt as if the clouds had parted to see the moon. As long as his master and Yun Shao dual cultivated, then his master's cultivation would increase by a lot, and the time before he could leave the divine grimoire space would also increase. When Yun Luofeng finished speaking, Yun Shao tightly grabbed her arm and pressed the girl who had been riding on him to the ground. Perhaps he was afraid that Yun Luofeng's head would hit the ground in the moment of the pressure, so he subconsciously held the back of her head with his hand to prevent the girl from being hit. After dual cultivation, you have to be responsible for me. Yun Luofeng was stunned and asked, how? Get married. What a man wanted was very simple. Since they had already decided to dual cultivate, they had to get married. You can't be a hooligan. He paused for a moment, then continued. Yun Luofeng's voice suddenly disappeared. After a long time, she finally found her voice. Where did you hear the words hooligan? As the saying goes, love without the goal of marriage is hooligan. Now, this guy must have heard this phrase from somewhere and decided that she was a hooligan. Even though she had indeed been hooligan to Yun Shao, your grandfather said so. The man had always been very honest in front of Yun Luofeng, so he didn't hesitate to sell out the old man. Yun Luofeng's forehead twitched. Stay away from that old man in the future, in case he leads you astray. You want to be a hooligan. Yun Shao lowered his head to look at the girl under him. You've already eaten me dry. I belong to you for the rest of my life. You can't chase me away, you can't beat me away, I will pester you to death. After saying this, he kissed the girl's lips forcefully, as if he wanted to vent all the longing he had for the past few days through a China kiss. No one knew how he had spent his time in the secret realm. Even the 7 years he spent in the forest of no return couldn't compare to this 1 year. The two of them had unknowingly taken off their clothes and Yun Shao was afraid that the ground would be too cold, so he moved the young lady onto the bed. In this spacious bed, the two of them faced each other. Yun Zhao's movements were a little jerky, but it made him seem even more innocent. However, just as the two of them were planning to take the next step, a bloody smell suddenly entered their nostrils, causing Yun Zhao's expression to change abruptly. Are you hurt? He couldn't care less about the most primitive desires in his heart. He hurriedly pressed down on Yun Luofeng's shoulder and anxiously scanned her body. When he saw the pool of blood on her lower body, the man's expression suddenly froze. At this moment, an almost imperceptible trace of awkwardness flashed across his handsome face. Of course, Yun Luofeng was even more embarrassed. Her monthly period was always punctual, but this time, it was about 10 days early, which caught her off guard. Suddenly, as if she had remembered something, she raised her head and fixed her gaze on the man. Yun Shao, do you know what this is? Under Yun Luofeng's gaze, Yun Shao slowly nodded. Back in the Yun family, in order to make it easier for me to take care of you, I had looked up some books on women. Those books said that after a woman's period comes, she needs to use ginger tea to warm her stomach, so I remembered it. Chapter 667. No, this isn't right. Suddenly, Little Mo's panicked voice came from Yun Luofeng's soul. Because Master is a virtual spirit body, your period will definitely come on time. There can't be any deviation. Especially when Master and Yun Shao are dual cultivating. This is too much of a coincidence. This isn't right. Yun Luofeng was startled and frowned slightly. She suddenly looked up at Yun Shao and said, Yun Shao, wait for me for a moment. After saying this, she closed her eyes and let her consciousness enter the divine grimoire space. The first thing he saw was a flustered little Amo. The little guy was holding a book in his hand and he seemed to be searching for something. Little Mo, what's going on? Yun Luofeng frowned and asked. I'm not sure. I'm looking for an answer now. Little Mo bit his lips. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. I found it. I know the reason. Little Mo stood up from the ground and kept the ancient book in his hand. He looked up at Yun Luofeng with his big bright eyes. This ancient book says that when a virtual spirit body and a spiritual body dual cultivate, a large amount of power will surge into the body. If the cultivator's power is too low, his body will explode and he will die. Therefore, only when the virtual spirit body breaks through to the venerable spirit body can they dual cultivate. Yun Luofeng smiled. His smile was evil and it made Little Mo's hair stand on end. Moss. Master. Little Mo gulped and took a few steps back. Little Mo, why didn't you tell me about this earlier? Yun Luofeng took a few steps closer to Little Mo. His body exuded a dangerous aura. Little Mo wanted to cry. I don't know either. I've forgotten many things. I didn't know this would happen. Then tell me, when I was in the Shao family, I saw Yun Shao naked. Why didn't this happen? Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes and continued to ask. That's probably because Master didn't feel lust then. This time, you felt lust and the Encyclopedia of Medicine sensed it. That's why your period came early. Little Mo's big bright eyes were full of fear. Master, I really don't know anything. I'm innocent. At this point, Little Mo's heart was filled with regret. Just as the two of them were about to successfully dual cultivate, something like this happened. What book did you just open? Yun Luofeng asked with an evil smile. This is an ancient book. Written on it are some things that are unknown to the people of the continent. Among them are also records of medical books. Little Mo replied weakly. Now, he would answer whatever Yun Luofeng asked. He did not dare to go against him at all. Memorize that ancient book within 3 days, Yun Luofeng said indifferently as he raised his eyes. What? Little Mo was so shocked that he almost jumped up. Master, you're being too cruel to me. I hate reading books the most. He had stayed in the divine grimoire space for so many years, but he still hadn't memorized that ancient book. It was clear how much he hated memorizing books. If he hadn't slacked off, he wouldn't have made such a mistake. Do you choose to endorse him or become Little White's wife? Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a smile as he looked at Little Mo. His voice was threatening. Little Mo pouted and looked pitifully at Yun Luofeng. Can I choose neither? Chapter 668. Yun Luofeng gently raised an eyebrow and looked at Shao Mo with a smile. What do you think? These 3 words caused Shao Mo to look even more aggrieved. His resentful eyes stared fixedly at Yun Luofeng. If anyone who was unaware of the situation were to see this, they would certainly think that Yun Luofeng had done something worse than an animal to him. That. Shao Mo replied pitifully. Can you give me half a month's time? 3 days is too short. In that instant, he had made his decision. He would rather memorize books than become Shao Bai's wife. Besides, he was a man, how could he marry a little girl? All right. Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes and smiled evilly. If you can't memorize this ancient book in half a month's time, I will immediately betroth you to Shao Bai. Hearing this, Shao Mo immediately jumped to his feet. His delicate, jade-like features were filled with determination. Master, don't worry, I will memorize the contents of this ancient book. What a joke. That little girl, Shao Bai, is much more terrifying than memorizing books. How could he possibly disobey Yun Luofeng's orders? Just then, Yun Luofeng sensed a ripple in the space outside and a cold light flashed across his eyes. It seems that someone has barged in. Then, he hurriedly sent his consciousness out of the divine grimoire space. In an elegant room, the young girl, who had been resting with her eyes closed, suddenly opened her eyes. In that instant, a familiar face was reflected in her eyes, causing her pupils to shrink abruptly. The night breeze blew past and his black robes fluttered. The man stood silently under the moonlight, displaying a grim and murderous aura. The aura around his body was swift and fierce and filled with a vicious aura. At this moment, the man in front of Yun Shao noticed that Yun Luofeng had already opened his eyes. His handsome, jade-like face curled into a demonic smile. That smile may have been very beautiful, but it caused Yun Luofeng's heart to surge with anger. Bai Su, what are you doing here? Her eyes were cold and gloomy as she climbed out of bed. Yun Luofeng then realized that she had unknowingly put on her clothes. The man's smile deepened when he heard the young girl's eerie voice, of course. To marry you. To marry you, of course. These words completely aroused the anger in Yun Zhao's heart. His black eyes grew even colder and colder as his deep and hoarse voice rang out in Yun Luofeng's ear. Leave it to me. All right. Yun Luofeng nodded lightly. She had great confidence in Yun Zhao's strength. Yun Zhao's cold gaze turned towards Bai Su as his voice contained a strong murderous intent. Get out. The man's style had always been extremely cold when it came to talking to unimportant people. He would never waste his breath to say an extra word. Bai Su waved the fan in his hand and smiled evilly. I must have that girl, Yun Luofeng. If you stop me, I can only kill you. Loser. Yun Zhao's voice was as cold and callous as ever, but it was able to pierce deeply into one's heart. More than a year ago, in the flowing gold nation, Bai Su had been defeated by him. Now, if he wasn't defeated, then what was he? Sure enough, Bai Su's eyes sank when she heard the man's words. She then replied icily, I may not have been able to defeat you in the past, but that doesn't mean that I'm no match for you now. If you have the ability, come at me and let's have a showdown. He then turned around and walked out of the door. Before he left, Bai Su turned around and looked at Yun Luofeng. She then smiled mysteriously and maliciously, as long as I kill your man, you will belong to me from now on. Hence, after a while, you will belong to the Bai family. Chapter 669. Faced with Bai Su's demonic yet confident features, Yun Luofeng curled his lips into a smile. You're no match for Yun Shao. Bai Su's eyes darkened. You have that much confidence in him? That's right. Why? Because he's my man. Because he is my man, and I will always believe in my man. Perhaps it was because of Yun Luofeng's words that Yun Zhao's malevolence was no longer as strong as it had been before. The coldness in his black eyes gradually faded and the corners of his lips slowly curled into a small angle. Wait for me. After he finished speaking, he walked into the night. His black robe gradually became one with the night, and he disappeared from Yun Luofeng's line of sight. The night was silent. In the overgrown forest, Yun Shao paused in his steps and turned coldly towards Bai Su. This should be about the end. Ha! Bai Su laughed mockingly. May I ask, why did you leave the Doctors' Association so far away? Because. Yun Zhao's voice was low and his eyes were cold. I'm afraid that if I use too much power, I will accidentally hurt her who is nearby. His power exists to protect her, not to hurt her. Yun Shao, Bai Su smiled. I really want to know just how powerful you are. I wonder if I'll be able to experience your true power today. Yun Shao did not speak and only used his power to answer Bai Su. Suddenly, a powerful energy surged from his body and even the sky was covered by dark clouds. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. His black robes fluttered under the night sky, accentuating the man's aura with a cold and murderous aura. It was a suffocating aura. Baisu's expression gradually turned serious and his demonic eyes stared deeply at the man. So, this is the Ghost Emperor's true power. Since that's the case, I must have a good fight with you today. Once he had spoken, an aura rose from Baisu's body as well. Under the envelopment of that aura, a strong wind rose and the leaves rustled loudly. Boom! The two of them launched their attacks at the same time. A powerful force spread out from their bodies and the entire forest was flattened in an instant. Baisu took a few steps back and a trickle of blood trickled down the corner of his mouth. He raised his brows and stared coldly at the black-robed man. I, Baisu, do not admire many people in my life. You, Ghost Emperor, are one of them. Baisu wiped the blood from the corner of her lips and laughed softly. Unfortunately, we are rivals in love. Love rival. Yun Xiao glanced at him coldly. You don't have the qualifications. In reality, Baisu did not like Yun Luofeng, he only wanted to pull her into the Bai family. This was something that anyone could see. When Baisu heard Yun Xiao's merciless words, he narrowed his eyes and a dangerous glint flashed across his eyes. Whether I'm qualified or not, you'll know in the future. Today, aside from looking for her, I've come here for another reason. I want to test your current power and now, I've already sensed your true power. Baisu gently curled the corners of his lips. Perhaps, the two of us will become archenemies and the winner will get her. Boom! The aura from Yun Xiao's body grew thicker and thicker. Like a great mountain, it pressed down from all directions. The entire sky was now filled with darkness and it was so heavy that it made it difficult for one to breathe. Chapter 670. You won't have a chance to win. Yun Xiao slowly approached Baisu and a long sword had appeared in his hand. A cold and grim aura surged from the blade of the sword, causing one to tremble in fear. Ghost Emperor. Baisu straightened his body and leaned lazily against a large rock behind him. He stared at Yun Xiao fearlessly. You can't kill me. Baisu's voice carried a hint of provocation as he sensed the man's murderous intent. I admit that I can't defeat you, but you can't kill me either. If I want to escape, I'm afraid that you won't be able to stop me. Yun Xiao paused in his tracks as his grim, black eyes stared icily at Baisu. The murderous intent on his body did not diminish. Instead, it increased. I won't let anyone threaten her. I've said it before, you can't kill me. Baisu repeated himself once again. The man's black robes fluttered wildly amidst the wild winds. His aura increased abruptly and countless black flames seemed to form around his body as he charged towards Baisu. Even if I can't kill you, I can make it so that you won't be able to appear by her side. Boom! The flames were like hands baring their fangs and brandishing their claws as they quickly engulfed Baisu. However, the flames soon exploded and Baisu's wretched figure appeared under the dusky sky. At this moment, Baisu's face was slightly pale. His handsome features were shrouded in a layer of evil and cold light. His crescent-colored robes were in tatters and he no longer had his previous threatening air of nobility. Suddenly, he laughed softly. His laughter was eerie and extremely terrifying. Ghost Emperor, I'll get what I want even if I have to risk my life. Bang! Just as Baisu had spoken, a hole suddenly exploded under his feet and his entire body fell into the hole. However, just as he fell into the hole, the ground which had been blasted away returned to its original state as if nothing had happened at all. Yun Xiao's face remained cold and grim as he faced everything before him as if he had already predicted everything. Master. Qin Yuan slowly descended from the sky and stood behind Yun Xiao. He cupped his fists respectfully and said, "Should I dig 3 feet into the ground and dig him out?" "There's no need." Yun Zhao's eyes were extremely cold. "He's already left." Qin Yuan lowered his head. "What if Bai Su, he was burned by the raging fire, he won't be able to recover for at least 2 years. Later, immediately bring the troops to wipe out the Bai family. I want to force him out." He couldn't kill him, but he could prevent him from appearing by Yun Luofeng's side. In these 2 years, he didn't even have time to recuperate. How could he find trouble with Yun Luofeng? Cough. Yun Xiao coughed as she clutched her chest tightly with her hand. Her tightly furrowed brows showed that she was in pain. Even if he obtained the netherworld fire, if he used it, there would still be a very strong side effect. However, only the power of the netherworld fire could allow Bai Su to recover from his injuries in 2 years. "Master!" Qin Yuan turned pale with fright and called out anxiously. "It's all right." Yun Xiao gradually lowered her hand from her chest and replied expressionlessly, "Don't let her know about this." Qin Yuan's heart was moved. For the sake of the mistress, Master had really let go of everything. Not only had he followed her willingly, he couldn't even bear to let her know about his injuries. Chapter 671. Perhaps, in this world, only the mistress could subdue the master. Under the dark night, a piercing sound broke the silence of the night. In the air, the woman in red was carrying a ragged little boy in her arms as she quickly ran towards a nearby mountain path. The little boy was dressed in a loose robe that did not match his small body. His long hair was longer than his body and reached his ankles. He looked like he was carved from jade and was extremely adorable. Only his large eyes contained an evil and cold light, and he had a maturity that was beyond his age. "Young master, we're already thousands of miles away from that place." The woman in red frowned slightly and a look of worry flashed across her beautiful face. "But, young master, you've been severely injured, which has caused your body to become like this." The boy lowered his eyes and looked at his little hands and feet. A cold light flashed across his eyes. "The Ghost Emperor has caused me to become like this. One day, I'll seek revenge on him. However, the most important thing now is to find a place to heal. I'm afraid that I won't be able to recover without at least 2 years." Even though the little boy's voice was soft and adorable, his tone was serious. He raised his brows slightly and turned to the woman in red next to him. "Jinyu, bring me away from this place immediately. Based on the Ghost Emperor's power, he'll probably find us in no time." "Yes, young master." Jinyu's face was filled with respect. However, there was reverence in her eyes when she looked at the man. During this period of time, there was an upheaval on the mainland. It was said that the Bai family had provoked the Ghost Emperor for some unknown reason. As a result, the Ghost Emperor's subordinates immediately went to flatten the entire Bai family. That day, there were endless cries of grief and blood flowed like a river in the Bai family. Even so, as the young master of the Bai family, Bai Su, did not show himself. As a result, no one knew where he had gone. At this moment, Jinyu slowly walked into a cave. She was dressed in red and was extremely gorgeous. Her beauty was incomparable. Her beauty was not the same as Fang Ya's graceful beauty. She also did not have the coquettish charm of the owner of the bamboo building, Chun Nyang. Instead, there was a sense of aloofness and gentleness on her beautiful face only appeared when she saw the little boy in the cave. "Young master, it's time to drink your medicine." Her voice was very gentle, and her beautiful eyes were fixed on the little boy, as if he was the only thing in her eyes. "Put it down." Bai Su sat cross-legged with his eyes closed. His jade-like face was filled with solemnity. After a long time, he finally opened his eyes and sighed, "I wonder how long it will take for my body to return to its original state." Young master, Jinyu gently pursed her red lips, this subordinate has something to report, the Ghost Emperor, he, destroyed the Bai family. Oh. Bai Su raised her eyebrows without batting an eyelid. So be it. After all, the members of the Bai clan are merely my puppets. If I did not need to use the Bai clan to gradually recover my strength, I would not have stayed in the Bai clan for so many years. But, young master, Jinyu, how many years have you been with me? Bai Su raised his head slightly and his demonic eyes fell upon the woman's beautiful face. For so many years, you have followed me everywhere. It must have been hard on you. Jinyu's heart suddenly moved and a crimson blush flashed across her beautiful face. Young master, ever since you saved me and brought me back to the Bai clan, my life has belonged to you. I can do anything for you. Chapter 672. For him, she would not regret it even if she was consigned to eternal damnation. However, 20 years ago, when Bai Su had picked her up, this man had looked like this. 20 years later, he was still the same. It was as if the passage of time did not leave any trace on his body. He was a legend who would never grow old. Unless, when he was seriously injured, he would turn into a little boy. At other times, he would always look like he was in his 20s. He had never changed. Jinyu, you don't have to call me young master anymore. From now on, the Bai family will no longer exist. Bai Su curled the corners of his lips and said. Jinyu joined her fists, yes, my lord. Jinyu, in a few days, we will leave this place and head for the continent of no return. The continent of no return was the other end of the forest of no return. It was also the place where Yun Zhao's mother was. The reason why it was called the continent of no return was because it was the same as the forest of no return. No one who had been there had returned. No matter where my lord is going, I will follow my lord for the rest of my life. Jinyu raised her head and looked straight at Bai Su. Her beautiful eyes were filled with determination. Her life was given by his lord. Even if he wanted to take it back one day, she would not regret it. On this continent, my strength recovers too slowly. Only when I go there, will I have the ability to fight against the Ghost Emperor. Bai Su narrowed his eyes slightly and the corners of his lips curled into a smile. What's more, I heard that the Ghost Emperor's mother is also there. Jinyu asked in surprise, the Ghost Emperor's mother. That's right, Bai Su's finger gently tapped on the stone table in front of him and he smiled coldly. Although I've left that place for a long time, I can still get all the information about that place. When the time comes, we can make a fuss in front of the Ghost Emperor's family. What does young master want this subordinate to do? Jinyu frowned slightly and asked. It's very simple. The Ghost Emperor's mother has adopted a daughter. At that time, find a chance to get close to that woman and spread the good things about the Ghost Emperor in front of her. It's best if she falls in love with the Ghost Emperor. In this way, I will have the chance to separate the Ghost Emperor and Yun Luofeng. Looking at the little boy's gloomy expression, Jinyu's heart surged with jealousy. But in the end, she suppressed all the bitterness in her heart. Yes, master. Since she was willing to do anything for his lord, that included helping him pursue other women. Even if the woman his lord loved was in danger, his lord wanted her to resist the danger for that woman. She would not hesitate to save her. Jinyu, the little boy, stood up and looked up at Jinyu, who was higher than her. His slender fingers gently lifted her chin and moved close to her ear. He said in a very ambiguous tone, when I'm done, I will never treat you badly. Jinyu's heart beat instantly, so fast that she felt that her heart was about to leave her chest. She bit her lips tightly and stared at Bai Su with deep emotions in her beautiful eyes. My lord, as long as I can be by your side, I'm already satisfied. I have no other requests. All right, Bai Su let go of Jinyu and smiled evilly. now, pack up. We'll set off immediately before the Ghost Emperor finds us. After speaking, he flung his sleeves and quickly walked out of the cave. Jin Yu looked at Bai Su's disappearing figure obsessively, and her beautiful eyes were filled with deep admiration. Even though his lord has become like this, he's still so handsome. In this life, being able to accompany his lord is already a blessing that I've cultivated for several lifetimes. So, I dare not hope for anything else. Chapter 673. Yun Luofeng did not know anything about the situation in the cave. After settling the matter with the Doctors' Association, she followed Yun Qingya back to the general's mansion. The old man did not expect Yun Luofeng and Yun Xiao to return at the same time. Even Yun Qingya had rushed back at this moment. He was so excited that tears streamed down his face. He pulled Yun Xiao and Yun Qingya to drink. This was a rare indulgence for them. Yun Luofeng did not stop them. Instead, he asked Qing Yan to bring them some sobering soup so that they wouldn't get drunk. After doing all this, she returned to her room to rest. It was only when night fell that the cold figure walked into the room under the moonlight. The moment the man appeared, Yun Luofeng had already woken up from her sleep. However, she still closed her eyes and did not move at all. For a long time, she could not feel the man's movements. She could only feel that this man was quietly standing at the head of her bed. His breathing was very light, as if he was afraid that he would disturb her. Fenger, the man's voice was low and hoarse, but it carried a solemn vow. In this life, I will protect you by your side. I will never let anyone hurt you. Yun Luofeng's brows were slightly moved. At this moment, a gentle kiss landed on her eyelashes, filled with endless love. The man's kiss did not have the slightest hint of alcohol. Instead, it was filled with a fragrance that was exceptionally comfortable. Suddenly, the young girl who was lying on the bed opened her eyes. Her dark eyes were filled with smiles as she said, "Yun Xiao, didn't you accompany Master Dongfang for a drink? Why did you come back so quickly?" The old man had no other hobbies in his life. The only things he loved were wine and tea. If someone accompanied him to drink, he would not return for the entire night. Furthermore, in order to welcome second uncle, the old man had even called a group of scoundrels. Logically speaking, they shouldn't be able to return tonight. Because I beat up the princess of the royal family. Yun Zhao's expression was serious as she spoke as a matter of course. Yun Luofeng rubbed his nose speechlessly. Did she provoke you? Yes. Yun Zhao's hoarse voice was magnetic. Her gaze kept drifting over to me. And then, I threw her out. Yun Xiao stared unblinkingly at Yun Luofeng. Only you can see me. In this world, only Yun Luofeng could look at him more than once. Even if other women only glanced at him, he would involuntarily feel a wave of disgust. Yun Luofeng raised his hand and patted Yun Zhao's face, the corners of his lips curled into a devilish smile. In the future, when the old man asks you to accompany him to drink, just ignore him. Let him cry and then hang himself. All right. Yun Zhao's voice became more and more hoarse, but it was so pleasant to the ears that it made people unable to extricate themselves. I'll listen to you. He had always listened to Yun Luofeng and would never reject any of her suggestions. Also, in the future, no matter if you're the Ghost Emperor or Yun Xiao, you'll have to wear a mask to prevent others from having improper thoughts about you. Yun Luofeng curled his lips and said flatteringly. Yun Xiao nodded slightly. I also have this thought. Looking at Yun Zhao's serious expression, the corners of Yun Luofeng's lips twitched. I was just joking. If you were to wear a mask, how would I be able to see your face at all times? Furthermore, you won't feel comfortable wearing a mask. She had indeed been joking. Who knew that Yun Xiao would suddenly become so serious? Chapter 674. Yun Zhao's gaze was fixed on Yun Luofeng. His tone was firm and unquestionable. "I'll take anything you say seriously." He would never think that she was joking, because he would act on every word she said. "Yun Xiao." Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes and slowly climbed up from the bed. She raised her head and gently hooked the man's chin with her fingers. "Actually, your serious expression is very moving." She loved Yun Xiao because of his sincerity and seriousness. How could she not be moved by a man like this? Yun Xiao's eyes never blinked as he stared at the young girl in front of him. "I think that your expression is very moving all the time." A dangerous light flashed across Yun Luofeng's eyes when he heard this. He asked with a half-smile, "Where did you learn this from?" Yun Xiao answered honestly, "From a book." "What book?" "Qin Yuan wrote it. How to Win a Woman's Favor." That book was indeed written by Qin Yuan for him. The contents were all about how to win a woman's favor. "Oh." Yun Luofeng raised an eyebrow. "Then how do you think I should win my favor?" "You should be able to work in the kitchen, enter the hall, get rid of your rival in love, and keep your chastity." The corners of Yun Zhao's lips curled up slightly. "If you ask me to go east, I can't go west. If you ask me to chase after a dog, I can't chase after a cat. Also, you have to say sweet nothings." Yun Xiao paused and continued. "I can do all these." But he could only do it for her alone. Yun Luofeng nodded in satisfaction. "This Qin Yuan is better than what Lin Qiong taught you. At least he didn't give you any erotic pictures to study with me, and he didn't ask you to offer your body." If Qin Yuan heard Yun Luofeng's words, he would definitely be so moved that tears streamed down his cheeks. His efforts over the past few days had finally paid off. Just based on what Mistress had said, Master would not scare him so often in the future. In the eyes of Yun Zhao's subordinates, their master was a very frightening existence. Especially the cold aura that he emitted at any time, it scared them to the point that they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. It was only in front of the mistress that the master would restrain all his hostility and become unprecedentedly obedient. That's right. Qin Yuan used the words obedient and obedient to describe Yun Xiao. It was precisely because he was well aware of Yun Luofeng's position in Yun Zhao's heart that he would tell him how to curry favor with the mistress. Even if he didn't say it, his master would do it himself. "Yun Xiao," Yun Luofeng smiled faintly, "I have one more thing to ask you. When you went drinking with the old man and the others, why was the imperial princess there?" Yun Xiao looked at Yun Luofeng. "That woman is the Grand Tutor's disciple. Grand Tutor was invited to drink this time, so she followed him. Moreover, Grand Tutor wants her to marry Yun Qingya." The man's words were already very obvious. The Grand Tutor had his eyes on Yun Qingya. He originally wanted the princess to come and matchmake Yun Qingya, but who knew that the princess did not take a fancy to second uncle. Instead, she took a fancy to Yun Xiao. Thus, she angered Yun Xiao and was thrown out by Yun Xiao. What did the old man say? Yun Luofeng's voice deepened. Yun Luofeng didn't know if it was an illusion, but after she finished speaking, a hint of a smile seemed to flash across Yun Zhao's face. The old man said that he wants to sever all ties with the Grand Tutor and tell the master and disciple to scram as far away as possible. Chapter 675. Yun Luofeng was speechless. This had always been the old man's style. Arrogant and domineering. Yet, it made one feel helpless. "I'm sleepy," Yun Luofeng stretched lazily. "The old man will handle this matter, we don't have to worry about it. Even if the person that the imperial princess likes is not you but second uncle, I still won't agree. After all, my second aunt has already been set to be Ning Axin. Knowing second uncle's personality, he would never like a spoiled and willful imperial princess." After she had spoken, Yun Luofeng did not pursue the matter any further. She gently narrowed her eyes as she looked at Yun Shao with a smile on her lips. Do you plan to sleep with me or go out? I'll follow you. The man did not say it clearly, but the meaning behind his words was clear. He wanted to share a bed with Yun Luofeng. Even if they could not do anything now, he would be satisfied as long as he could hug her to sleep. Aren't you afraid that you can't hold it in? Yun Luofeng looked at Yun Shao with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Yun Shao was silent for a moment before she replied, I can hold it in. All right, then you can go to bed. Yun Luofeng narrowed her eyes and the smile on her face grew wider. The next day, the sky had just brightened when the old man's angry roar sounded from the great hall. What are you doing here? Yun Luofeng had just stepped out of the great hall when she heard the old man's angry voice. She gently raised her brows and walked in. Grandfather, why are you so angry so early in the morning? The young girl's voice slowly drifted into the hall, causing the old man's brows to gradually calm down. Feng why are you here? The old man smiled as he watched the young girl walk into the great hall. His face carried an affectionate smile. Yun Luofeng did not seem to see the old man and the young girl in the great hall as she slowly walked towards the old man. Your voice was so loud, I'm afraid that everyone in the general's residence could hear you. How could I not come? Sigh, the old man sighed, it's actually nothing big, I didn't think that I would disturb you. Grandfather, Yun Luofeng smiled wickedly, even if you didn't disturb me, I still wanted to see who dared to have designs on my man. As she spoke, she looked at the old man and the young man in the hall. The old man's beard was white, and his wrinkled face was filled with helplessness. His back was bent, and his aged figure looked extremely pitiful as he stood in the breeze. Kneeling beside him was a young girl dressed in luxurious clothes. Her face was slightly pale and her eyes were filled with tears of grievance. She bit her lips and did not make a sound. Needless to say, this young lady was the younger sister of the current emperor, the sixth princess of Long Yuan country. Her expression was one of grievance and humiliation. It was as if for her, having a princess like her kneel to a general was something shameful. However, it wasn't only the Grand Tutor's idea to come and apologize. Even her imperial brother had forced her to come. She had no choice but to come and beg for forgiveness. Lady Yun, this matter is indeed the sixth princess's fault. She did not intentionally glance at your guard. Because of this, I have specially brought her here to apologize. As he spoke, the Grand Tutor deliberately emphasized the words guard. However, he did not notice that after these words were spoken, Yun Luofeng's eyes darkened slightly. The Grand Tutor hurriedly pushed the sixth princess and shouted sternly, "What are you waiting for? Quickly apologize to Lady Yun." Old General, are you really not going to forgive me? Originally, he had brought the sixth princess here to build a good relationship with the Yun family. Now, even the imperial family had to be courteous to the general's mansion. If they were to form a marriage alliance with the general's mansion, there would definitely be countless benefits. Thus, he had brought his own disciple over. In his opinion, his disciple was well-educated, gentle, and virtuous. There was no way the Yun family wouldn't like her. However, who would have thought that his disciple, who had always made him proud, did not take a fancy to Yun Qingya. Instead, he fell in love with the Yun family's guard and even angered the old man. Chapter 677. Grandfather. Seeing that Master Yun was about to continue speaking, Yun Luofeng swept a glance at him and stopped him from speaking. Then, he shot a cold glance at the sixth princess. Let me ask you this. If the Yun family was just a general's household without any power and needed to rely on the royal family, what would you do after you've taken a liking to Yun Shao? You would ask the emperor to order me to give Yun Shao to you. Yun Luofeng's eyes lit up, as if he could see through everything. The sixth princess's face paled, her eyes filled with panic as if she had been seen through. What she said was the truth. If the Yun family was not so powerful, perhaps she would have asked her royal brother to order Yun Shao to marry her. As for Yun Luofeng, she would make another order to choose a good husband for her. So, why do you think the Yun family should forgive you? Yun Luofeng raised his brows slightly. I'll give you a chance. Leave the Yun family immediately after I count to 3. Otherwise, I won't let you step out of this door. She had long known that based on Yun Zhao's excellence, he would attract countless peach blossoms. So, she had to be prepared to break these peach blossoms one by one. Since Yun Shao was the man she had taken a liking to, he could only have her as his woman in this lifetime. The sixth princess gritted her teeth fiercely. I'm willing to be his concubine. Do you know, ever since I saw him domineeringly snatch away Imperial concubine Mu's seat for you in the Imperial Palace, I've been fascinated by his temperament. I've never wanted to hurt you, I just want to be by his side, I have no other wish. In the end, the sixth princess still said this. After saying this, her body softened and she sat paralyzed on the ground, staring pleadingly at Yun Luofeng. Don't worry, I'll definitely get along well with you. I'm confident. Slap. The Grand Tutor was stunned by the sixth princess's words at first. After a long while, he finally reacted and slapped her across the face, saying angrily, Sixth princess, do you know what you've just said? He's only a guard and you want to be a guard's concubine. The sixth princess shook her head. He's not a guard. He's such a powerful and domineering man, he's definitely not a guard. Besides, even if he's a guard, I still want to follow him. Grand Tutor was so angry that he raised his hand again, but his slap didn't land. Sixth princess, have you forgotten what your brother told you before you came? You are really stubborn. The sixth princess did not look at the Grand Tutor. Her gaze was always on Yun Luofeng. Sister Yun, I know he's not your guard. He definitely has another identity. Although I don't know why he has to stay by your side as a guard, I do know that a man has to take a concubine. You don't want him to take a concubine who is always against you and is very worrisome. Her eyes were still sincere, and there was no longer that aggrieved look in her eyes. I swear, if I become his concubine, I will definitely listen to you and respect you in all aspects. I will even join forces with you to deal with the concubines he takes in the future. I only hope that Big Sister Yun can accept me, even if it's just me serving you. Suddenly, Yun Luofeng chuckled. His chuckle was so cold that it made one's hair stand on end. Chapter 678. Since you wish to become his concubine, you can go and look for him. The young girl caught a glimpse of the man who had just entered the great hall. The corners of her lips curled into an angle and her eyes held a faint smile. The sixth princess did not seem to notice the man behind her. She gritted her teeth and said, I don't know how I've offended this man to the point that he would humiliate me in front of so many people. Lady Yun, as his legal wife, you have the right to take a concubine on his behalf. That's why I have the audacity to ask you to fulfill my request. As soon as the sixth princess said this, she suddenly felt a chill coming from behind her, causing her internal organs to tremble uncontrollably. Is that so? Yun Luofeng slowly approached the sixth princess. Then why do you think I would willingly hand my man over to someone else? The sixth princess suppressed the fear in her heart and continued to speak, Lady Yun, he will have to take a concubine sooner or later. Do you want him to find someone who is not compatible with you? Since that's the case, why don't I let you have less to worry about? Boom! Suddenly, the chill from behind her grew even stronger. It was as if an invisible fist had landed on the sixth princess's back. Instantly, her body was flung out of the way and she spat out a mouthful of blood. When the sixth princess landed on the ground, the Grand Tutor felt the pressure on his body disappear and he could finally catch his breath. However, when he saw the man's grim features, fear rose in his heart and his elderly body trembled. From the moment Yun Shao had stepped into the Great Hall, he had noticed his presence. Just as he was about to warn the sixth princess, his body suddenly became immobilized and he could not even make a sound. This feeling was as if an invisible hand was strangling him fiercely. You! The sixth princess raised her pale face and stared in shock at the black-robed man who was as grim as an eagle. A sense of fear slowly appeared in her eyes. Yun Zhao's cold gaze was fixed upon the sixth princess. Even when the man had thrown her out of the window in the restaurant last night, he had never looked at her. But now, the man's eyes were on her. Logically speaking, the sixth princess should have been very excited, but now, she could not bring herself to smile at all. The man's gaze was very cold and cruel. It was as if she was just an ant in his eyes, the kind that could be squashed to death at any time. Remember. Yun Luofeng sneered at the sixth princess. No one else is allowed to touch my man. If anyone dares to target him, I'll make sure they won't be able to return. The sixth princess opened her mouth wide in panic. She had not expected Yun Luofeng to say such a thing. She hurriedly looked at the cold-faced man, but saw that he had no reaction to her words, as if he was silently approving of all her actions. At this moment, the sixth princess could not tell what she was feeling. Jealousy? Or envy? She only knew that in this lifetime, she would never be able to accompany this man. If she couldn't accompany him, then what was the point of living? Sixth princess, what are you doing? The Grand Tutor's eyes reddened when he saw the sixth princess drawing her sword. He was so anxious that he wanted to rush over and snatch the sword from her hand. Before he could reach the sixth princess, he saw Yun Shao raise her hand and send the Grand Tutor flying with one slap. With a bang, his body rolled out of the hole. Chapter 679. A man's cold and hoarse voice rang in her ear. If she wants to die, let her die. Other than Yun Luofeng, there was no other woman in this world who could make her feel pity. The sixth princess's fingers trembled and the hand on her neck trembled slightly. Even though she had wanted to die, she could not bring herself to do it. However, he had never imagined that this man would be so cold and callous. It made one's heart turn cold. Hee, the sixth princess laughed. Her smile was incomparably desolate. Ever since I first saw you, my heart has fallen on you. I've never asked for anything else but to be by your side, whether as a concubine or a servant. Why am I willing to give up my dignity in exchange for your heartlessness? Yun Shao looked at the sixth princess expressionlessly. Suicide. Or should I do it? The sixth princess's heart suddenly trembled. She did not hold on tightly to the sword in her hand, causing it to slip from her palm. Her slightly raised eyes were filled with pain. How have I offended you? Yun Shao was not a talkative person, but he felt that the other party had not suffered enough of a blow. He suddenly said, Your wishful thinking has offended me. There was no other reason but because of her wishful thinking, she had offended him. The sixth princess lowered her eyes and silently picked up the long sword on the ground. She smiled miserably and said, I understand. I won't stay here and be an eyesore to you. If you want me to die, I can grant your wish. From the beginning, Yun Luofeng had his fists folded and watched everything coldly from the sidelines. Love could easily make a person lose their rationality. After all, she could not stay in the Yun family for the rest of her life. In order to prevent her family from being hurt, she must nip all dangers in the bud. She must not let them have any chance to sprout. The sixth princess slowly placed the sword on her neck again. Her sorrowful eyes stared at Yun Xiao, and there was a tinge of unwillingness in her eyes. She was hoping that this man would have some pity in his heart and stop her from committing suicide. However, he did not. Yun Xiao only looked at her coldly, his face expressionless. "Mother." Suddenly, a soft voice rang out from outside the hall. After hearing this voice, everyone instantly turned their heads to look at it. It was a little boy who was dressed in a snow-white robe and looked like he was carved from jade. This little boy's eyes were exceptionally bright, and his cute little face had a brilliant smile. He was so innocent and pure that it made people very fond of him. "Little Amo." Yun Luofeng was startled. This morning, little Amo left the divine grimoire space, saying that he had something to do. But now, he had appeared here. "Mother, father, I'm back." Little Mo's smile was exceptionally bright. A dark light flashed across his eyes when he saw the sixth princess. He didn't know if it was intentional, but he deliberately stood far away from Yun Luofeng and exposed himself in front of the sixth princess. Yun Zhao's body froze as he stared at the little fellow who had called him daddy. How could he not remember having a child with Fenger? "Little Amo, where did you go just now?" Yun Luofeng frowned and was about to walk towards little Amo. However, at this moment, a light breeze flashed by and appeared in front of little Amo in no time. The sixth princess's expression was no longer as pitiful as before. She placed the sword on little Mo's neck and looked coldly at the people in the hall. He did not know how the sixth princess could be so bold as to say such things in front of Yun Luofeng, the god of plague. He didn't know that no matter how gentle a woman was, once she met the person she liked, she would become extremely crazy. Just as the Grand Tutor was about to shout again, a soft voice suddenly rang out, echoing in the breeze for a long time. "Auntie, how are you going to kill me?" Little Mo's voice was very calm, so calm that it was unusual. "Of course I'm going to cut off your neck and kick it like a ball." "Of course, if your mother agrees." The sixth princess smiled icily and turned around. Suddenly, the words that she was about to say were stuck in her throat. She widened her eyes in horror and looked as if she had seen something terrifying. Chapter 681. "Auntie, you said to cut off my head, is that it?" In the great hall, the little boy plucked his head off and held it in his hands. His face still carried an innocent smile, but it now looked incomparably sinister. "Ah!" A shrill scream rang through the entire Yun family home. "Auntie, didn't you say that you wanted to cut my neck? I've even saved you some time. How are you going to thank me?" Xiao Emo smiled as he watched the sixth princess retreat. He took a few steps forward and handed his head over to the sixth princess. "I'll let you kick it like a ball." His face was right in front of the sixth princess's, his bright eyes filled with a chilling smile. Don't come any closer." Clang! The sixth princess's sword fell to the ground. Her legs trembled and her pale face was filled with fear. A strong smell of urine wafted through the air. "You were the one who wanted to kick my head like a ball. I pitied you for being so poor that you couldn't even afford to buy a game of football. That's why I plucked my head off for you. Why didn't you accept my kindness?" As soon as Xiao Emo finished speaking, the sixth princess's eyes rolled back and she fainted. "How boring!" Xiao Emo curled his lips and put his head back on his neck. She fainted from just a scare. "Mother, how are you going to deal with her now?" Xiao Emo turned to look at Yun Luofeng and suddenly realized that the furious old man had been completely scared out of his wits. His eyes were staring blankly at him. Feeling a little apologetic, he called out, "Great-grandfather." Thump. It would have been better if Xiao Emo had not called out. Now that he had called out, the old man's eyes also rolled back and he fainted from fright. Anyone who saw a living person plucking their head off and still able to speak would have fainted. Except for Yun Luofeng and Yun Shao. Because these two were so mentally strong that they could not be considered human. Grandfather. Yun Luofeng's expression changed slightly. She hurriedly stepped forward and pinched the old man's philtrum tightly. At the same time, a wave of spiritual energy flowed from her fingertips into the old man's philtrum. The old man slowly woke up. Feng He, was I dreaming just now? I dreamt that little Mo cut off his own head. Yun Luofeng looked at the well-behaved little Mo and sighed helplessly. Grandfather, I want to be honest with you about something. What? The old man asked in a daze. Shao Mo saw someone from the Bai clan asking for my hand in marriage. In order to prevent other men from having any ideas about me, he pretended to be my son. Yun Luofeng pulled little Mo over from the side and continued, don't be fooled by his 6 years of age. In fact, he's older than all of us combined. The old man scratched his head like a monk and asked in confusion, Feng He, what do you mean by that? I don't understand. What did he mean by little Mo was older than all of them combined? This little fellow was clearly only 5 or 6 years old. He's not human. The 4 words revealed little Mo's identity. Grandfather, all these years, I've been hiding it from you. Yun Luofeng raised his eyes and stared deeply at the old man. Everyone says that I had concealed my strength in the past, which was why I was able to explode with such great power in the end. Actually, I was indeed a complete and utter good-for-nothing in the past. There was nothing to hide. Chapter 682. The old man's jaw dropped in shock as he stared at Yun Luofeng in astonishment. You mean to say that in these 2 years, you went from a good-for-nothing to a celestial spirit cultivator? To go from a good-for-nothing to a celestial spirit cultivator in 2 years, how abnormal was that? That's right, Yun Luofeng nodded lightly, all of this happened because I met Shao Mo. He's lived for a long time and knows how to help me get rid of my good-for-nothing constitution. Yun Luofeng was telling the truth. If Shao Mo had not given her the prescription, she would not have been able to get rid of her good-for-nothing title. But at the same time, there were many things that she had not told the old man. For example, transmigration, or the medicine field. The old man's jaw dropped. He had many questions to ask Yun Luofeng, but in the end, he did not ask a single word. No matter what, she was still his granddaughter. That alone was enough. Feng He, I'll only say one thing. The old man crawled up from the ground and said stubbornly, I don't care if Shao Mo is your biological son or how long he has lived, he is my great-grandson. The old man really liked Shao Mo from the bottom of his heart. Even if he was not Yun Luofeng's child, he would still treat him as his great-grandson. That's up to you, Yun Luofeng shrugged and turned to look at Shao Mo, you don't have to call me mother anymore. Also, you're not allowed to scare the old man. Shao Mo stuck out his tongue and said with a smile, Master, I forgot that great-grandfather was here and accidentally scared him. In the future, wherever great-grandfather is, I won't do such a thing. The old man was very happy to hear the little fellow call him great-grandfather, but he could not help but look at Yun Luofeng and Yun Shao with a sad gaze. When can the 2 of you let me hold the baby? This. Yun Luofeng rubbed his nose, we'll have to wait. Wait for how long? The old man's eyes widened as he asked. Probably. When I break through to the venerable realm. What? The old man jumped in anger, when you break through to the venerable realm. Then how long do I have to wait? I don't care, I just want to hold the baby. The 2 of you hurry up and get married. Wasn't there a term for old children? Once the old man became willful, no one could stop him. Don't worry. Yun Shao raised her hand and pulled Yun Luofeng into her embrace. She lowered her gaze to stare at the young girl's peerlessly beautiful features. We will complete the task you've given us as soon as possible. Why are you calling me elder? You should call me grandpa. When the old man, who had been glaring at Yun Luofeng, looked at Yun Shao again, that chrysanthemum-like face blossomed into a resplendent smile. This made Yun Luofeng wonder if Yun Shao was this old man's biological grandson and he had adopted him. Otherwise, the difference between their attitudes would be like heaven and earth. However, Yun Zhao's expression stiffened when she heard old Master Xing's words. All these years, he had never had any relatives, especially his grandfather. Thus, these two words were extremely difficult for him to say. Yun Luofeng glanced at Yun Shao, then turned towards the old man. She was just about to say a few words on Yun Zhao's behalf, but in that instant, the man's cold and hoarse voice rang out beside her ear. Grandpa, there was a hint of awkwardness in his voice. It was obvious that he was not used to this form of address. Haha, the old man laughed heartily. Hearing the word grandpa makes me so happy. Chapter 683. Yun Luofeng felt wronged. I've been calling you grandfather all these years and I've never seen you so happy. How can granddaughter be called the same as grandson-in-law? Master Yun glared at Yun Luofeng and said irritably. Grandfather, am I your biological granddaughter? If you don't make me angry all day, I'll admit that you're my biological granddaughter. Master Yun scoffed and continued, you two handle the rest, I'm going out for some tea. Then, he turned and walked out of the hall. In reality, Master Yun was a very protective person. If Yun Luofeng was bullied, he would be the first to stand up for her. Wasn't there a saying that went, love me, love my dog? Because Yun Shao had given her heart and soul to Yun Luofeng, he had accepted Yun Shao. If it had been someone like Gao Ling, even if Yun Luofeng liked her, he wouldn't have cared. Little Mo, wake her up. Yun Luofeng's gaze gradually turned towards the unconscious sixth princess. His eyes darkened as he ordered coldly. Master, I'm the best at waking people up. Little Mo's face lit up with an evil smile as he slowly walked towards the sixth princess. It was unknown when a dagger had appeared in his hand. Under the morning light, the dagger emitted an intense, bone-piercing cold light. Ah! When the dagger cut off the sixth princess's finger, she woke up. She saw the eerie smile on Little Mo's face and her body trembled uncontrollably. You! Don't come over, help, master, save me. Unfortunately, the Grand Tutor had already fainted from Little Mo's earlier actions and could not respond to the sixth princess's call for help. Do you still want to kick my head? Little Mo smiled evilly. If you want, I don't mind taking it off again. No, I don't want it anymore. I'm begging you, please let me go, I won't have any more wishful thinking. The sixth princess hurriedly knelt on the ground and kowtowed fiercely. She didn't even feel her scalp breaking. Don't be fooled by her repeated attempts at suicide. In reality, she was used to living a pampered life and feared death the most. Do you still want to steal my mother's man? No. I don't want to think about it anymore. The sixth princess bit her pale lips tightly. Her heart was filled with unprecedented panic. She never thought that Yun Luofeng's son would be so abnormal. A living person was actually able to cut off his head. If that wasn't abnormal, then what was? What the sixth princess did not know was that Xiao Mo was not a human. He was merely a spiritual being born from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. His body was forged with spiritual power. Unless the opponent was too strong and could make his spiritual power go berserk in an instant, he would not die. Don't want to. Unfortunately, it's too late. Little Mo sneered. He turned to look at Yun Shao and his lips curled into a smile. Yun Zhao's father, how should I deal with her? Even though Yun Luofeng had told him not to call them father and mother, he still used this form of address in front of a delusional woman like the sixth princess. A life worse than death. The man's voice was as cold as ever, but it made the sixth princess's heart turn cold. A life worse than death. This man actually wanted her to live a life worse than death. That was even more painful than death. No. The sixth princess screamed in panic, "You can't do this, that's too cruel. I don't want to live a life worse than death." Chapter 684. Shut up. Xiao Mo's little face sank. He then stomped fiercely on the sixth princess's chest and sneered, "Who gave you permission to make such a ruckus in the Yun family home? My father wants you to suffer a fate worse than death, so you must suffer a fate worse than death. Besides, my parents don't need to do anything about this, it would only dirty their hands." The sixth princess spat out a mouthful of blood after being stomped on by Xiao Mo. Her pale features were filled with shock. She did not know where this little fellow had gotten such great power from to render her completely defenseless. Milk tea. Xiao Mo raised his chin, "Tear this woman to pieces." "Oh, that's right, my father wants her to suffer a fate worse than death, so let her live for a few more days. Don't toy with her to death in one day." Squeak, squeak. Milk tea squeaked and crawled out from Yun Luofeng's sleeve. He placed his little paws on his waist and puffed out his chest as he walked towards the sixth princess. "You threatened my master and now you're getting your just desserts, aren't you?" Milk tea stared at the sixth princess with disdain. She did not hide her powers and spoke in the human language. After Xiao Mo's act of cutting off her head, the sixth princess was once again shocked. She widened her eyes as she stared fixedly at the gold-seeking mouse in front of her. A chill crept into her heart. It was only at this moment that she realized that she had underestimated the Yun family. This spiritual beast that could speak in the human language was not an existence that the imperial family could resist. The sixth princess gently closed her eyes at the thought of this. Her heart was overflowing with regret and nearly swallowed her whole. "Xiao Mo, don't let her blood stain the Yun family home. Clean it up after this." Yun Luofeng then turned around and walked out of the great hall. Was she ruthless? On this mainland where the strong were revered, if one did not use cruel methods, one would be at the mercy of others. Kindness would not be able to survive in this place. If the sixth princess had spied on Yun Xiao, perhaps she would not have allowed her to die so painfully. However, she had used Xiao Mo as a threat. Even though Xiao Mo was not afraid of the sixth princess based on her level of power, she could not tolerate anyone threatening her family. That's right. In Yun Luofeng's heart, Xiao Mo was no different from family. If it weren't for her, he might have died in the explosion of the experiment, and he wouldn't have the status he had today. Yun Luofeng paused in his steps and turned to look at the man next to him. "If anyone threatens you and the lives of my loved ones, I will send them to hell even if I have to overturn the entire world." Yun Xiao gripped the young girl's hand tightly, her expression determined. "No matter what you want to do, I will accompany you." Even if he had to accompany her to overthrow the world. Yun Luofeng smiled. Her smile was poignant and beautiful. She no longer had the arrogance and dominance that she displayed in front of others. "Yun Xiao, do you believe in your past life?" She slowly retracted her gaze and without waiting for Yun Xiao to speak, she continued, "In my past life, I had a blissful family. However, because of my father's wealth, it led to the destruction of the entire family. When I was young, my mother hid me and I managed to escape. However, I could only watch as my parents fell into a pool of blood. I was so scared that I didn't dare to speak. The murderer who killed my parents used the excuse of adopting me to forcibly seize my family's assets. However, after a few years, he sent me to an orphanage. Yun Luofeng's heart became even more determined as she thought of the events of her past life. Chapter 685. In my previous life, I wasn't on this mainland. There was no spiritual energy on that mainland and no one cultivated there. Even so, it was still a world where the strong preyed on the weak. In that world, money was everything. During those years in the orphanage, I suffered the fickleness of human nature and I also saw the supercilious looks of the world. I, who had always been kind, only understood after countless setbacks that kindness was of no use. Power was the most important thing. Yun Luofeng's gaze turned towards Yun Shao once again. So, to be able to live again, I want power more than anyone else. And the reason why I want power. It's because I want to live. In her previous life, she had used up all her strength in order to live. If she hadn't met her master, perhaps she would have spent her entire life in darkness. Yun Shao, do you believe what I've said? Yun Luofeng's black eyes flashed with a strange light as he stared unblinkingly at Yun Shao. Yun Shao silently embraced Yun Luofeng's body. At that moment, he clearly felt the coldness of the young girl's body and his heart unconsciously ached. I'll believe anything you say. Yun Luofeng smiled. That's all in the past. Now, I have a brand new life. In that world, I no longer have any relatives. The only thing I can't let go of is my master. Furthermore, I passed away before I could avenge my parents. Even though she knew who had killed her parents, she didn't have any evidence. As a result, she couldn't avenge them even after so many years. Where is the place that you speak of? Is the murderer of your family still alive? Yun Shao frowned slightly as he asked. The place that I lived in my previous life was called China. The murderer of my parents is still at large. Not being able to avenge them would perhaps become the thing that she hated the most in her life. Yun Shao lowered her brows and silently made up her mind. Yun Shao, it's grandfather's birthday soon. After the birthday, we'll immediately set off and head to the other end of the forest of no return. However, on the day of her grandfather's birthday, she would present him with a gift. As she watched Yun Luofeng's figure walk towards the backyard, Yun Shao said grimly, Qin Yuan, go and check if there's a mainland named China. Yes, master. Behind the man, Yun Shao cupped his fists respectfully, but a trace of doubt flashed across his eyes. China. Why had he never heard of this place before? However, he didn't dare to ask this question. Since his master had asked him to look for it, he had to do his best to search for it. Also, Yun Shao swept her cold gaze across the unconscious grand tutor and said in a cold voice, cripple his dantian and throw him out. If he dares to take another step into the Yun family, break his legs. Other than in front of Yun Luofeng, he was always cold and heartless to others. That was why he was known as the Ghost Emperor. Understood. Qin Yuan looked sympathetically at the grand tutor. This fellow could have taken in anyone as a disciple, but why did he have to take in someone as arrogant as the sixth princess? In that case, it was his own fault for being dragged down by her. Who asked these people to provoke his mistress yesterday and still dare to come knocking on his door today? The fact that master didn't kill him was already an exceptional mercy. Qin Yuan, Yun Shao paused for a moment before he gave another order, spread the news of what happened today in an exaggerated manner. As his voice fell, Yun Shao did not say anything else and his grim figure gradually disappeared under the morning light. Chapter 686. Qin Yuan's efficiency was high. Because the sixth princess's actions were already outrageous, Qin Yuan did not need to add fuel to the fire to shock the world. In less than a day, everyone in the imperial city knew what the sixth princess had done in the general's mansion. It was said that she fell in love with the Yun family's son-in-law at first sight and wanted to replace Yun Luofeng. Because Yun Luofeng rejected her, the sixth princess kidnapped Yun Luofeng's son to threaten him. And the content of her threat was for the Yun family's son-in-law to sleep with her for a night. She even shamelessly stuck to him. As for the matter of little Mo taking off her head, no one knew. The sixth princess had fallen into the Yun family's hands and the grand tutor had gone crazy when he woke up. He could not remember what he did that day, but he kept screaming for the sixth princess to stop. It was precisely because of these words that the Yun family's announcement was further confirmed. The entire imperial city was in an uproar. Who was Yun Luofeng? That woman was a demon who killed without blinking an eye. The sixth princess dared to steal her man. Wasn't this the same as touching a tiger's butt? At this moment, in the imperial palace, a man dressed in dragon robes sat on the dragon throne. His face was pale as he looked at all the officials present. My dear officials, Lu Er has committed an unforgivable mistake by going to the Yun family. Do you have any way to redeem herself? A man dressed in court robes slowly walked out from the crowd of officials. He joined his fists respectfully and said, Your Imperial Majesty, the sixth princess has provoked the Yun family. If we want to protect ourselves, we have no choice but to abandon her. After all, the Yun family's eldest daughter is too domineering and cannot tolerate a single grain of sand in her eyes. If we do not give up on the sixth princess, we will definitely become enemies with the Yun family. The emperor sighed, that is all we can do. The sixth princess was his biological sister. Even so, he had no choice but to give her up. It was his sister's fault for being so audacious that she dared to offend someone from the Yun family. Everyone knew that in the entire Long Yuan country, even if someone offended the emperor, they could not offend the Yun family. Even if it was just a servant. But she, on the other hand, snatched a man from Yun Luofeng. Reporting to your majesty. Another official stood out and said respectfully, General Yun's heart is no longer with the imperial family. Right now, he only had the title of a general. Therefore, I have a suggestion. If we were to form a marriage alliance with the Yun family, we might be able to mend the relationship between the two sides. Marriage? With whom? Yun Luofeng or Yun Qingya? The emperor frowned and asked. The minister smiled, the royal family no longer has any unmarried princes, so they can't marry Yun Luofeng. Thus, they can only choose Yun Qingya. I suggest that we use Princess Lingxin to marry Yun Qingya. The emperor's expression changed slightly. Princess Lingxin, I'm afraid this isn't appropriate. Lingxin was different from the sixth princess. Even though the sixth princess was the emperor's biological sister and Princess Lingxin was his half-sister, he could not bear to marry Lingxin off. There was no other reason other than that Ling Xian's physique was a little different. He was an excellent cauldron. If he had intercourse with her, he would be able to increase his strength. Of course, he only found out about this recently. Otherwise, when Gao Tu was still in power, he would never have let go of such a perfect cauldron. He would have used her to obtain the greatest benefits for himself. If it wasn't for the coincidence, no one would have discovered this. Chapter 687. Your Majesty, if it was in the past, we could just use any princess to form a marriage alliance with the Yun family. But now, the Yun family is already very dissatisfied with the royal family. If we don't take out a better one, the Yun family might not accept it. The minister continued to persuade. When the other ministers heard this, they all stood up. Your Majesty, the Prime Minister is right. Please use Princess Lingxin's marriage alliance to eliminate the Yun family's dissatisfaction with the royal family. Your Majesty, please allow it. So what if we sacrifice Princess Lingxin for the royal family? The emperor sighed heavily. Even though he was a little reluctant, he could only agree to the minister's request for the sake of the entire royal family. This matter will be left to the Prime Minister. Dismissed. Farewell, Your Majesty. The ministers all knelt down and said respectfully. Under the respectful farewell of the ministers, the emperor flicked his sleeves and left without looking back. The day of the birthday, which everyone had been waiting for, finally came. On this day, the Yun family was extremely lively. The entrance was like a market and there was an endless stream of horses and carriages. However, no matter how noble one's status was, they had to dismount and walk 10 meters away from the Yun family. Even the members of the royal family had never broken this rule. From this, one could see the status of the Yun family in everyone's hearts. Old Master Yun sat in the hall with a smile. He did not go forward to welcome the guests, but no one dared to raise any objections. Who asked the Yun family to be so powerful? Who dared to ask him to welcome them? Therefore, the nobles of the imperial city walked in and welcomed Old Master Yun with loud laughter. General Yun, on behalf of the royal family, I wish you a long life. The Prime Minister laughed and walked in front of the old man. He cupped his fists and said, This time, I've brought a congratulatory gift for the Yun family. This gift is for Sir Qingya. I'm sure he'll like it. How could a man resist the temptation of beauty? Furthermore, this beauty was a top-grade cauldron. The world wished for it. If Yun Qingya knew all of this, she would definitely accept it happily. Hee, the old man laughed disapprovingly. Then I thank Prime Minister Liu on behalf of Qingya. Even so, it was obvious from the old man's face that he was not interested in the Prime Minister's gift. The Prime Minister did not explain further. He smiled and said, General Yun, you will know how precious this gift is in a moment. He was confident that the Yun family would definitely accept his gift. At that time, General Yun would definitely thank him. Unfortunately, Old Master Yun did not look at him. Instead, he kept his eyes fixed on the outside of the hall, and there was a hint of urgency in his eyes. Why hadn't the Ning family arrived yet? He was still planning to let Ning Xian and Qingya get engaged today. But after waiting for so long, the Ning family still hadn't arrived. At this moment, a servant suddenly rushed in and reported, Lord General, the Ning family has come to congratulate you on your birthday. Ning family. The old man's eyes lit up and he stood up abruptly. The people from the Ning family had finally arrived. Thinking of this, Grandpa Xing walked out quickly, planning to welcome his in-laws in person. Seeing his actions, everyone in the hall was shocked. Even when the people from the medical pavilion came to offer their blessings, the general did not go out to welcome them. Who exactly had come this time? How could they make him personally welcome them? In the noisy courtyard, the old master saw Elder Ning standing under the night sky at a glance and hurriedly walked up to him. Chapter 688. General Yun, I'm not late, am I? Elder Ning looked at Old Man Yun, who was walking towards him quickly, and asked with a smile. Ha! Old Man Yun laughed out loud. Elder Ning came at the right time, let's go. I have something to announce later. Elder Ning chuckled and followed the old man into the hall. The guests were all curious. They didn't know who this old man was, for the general to be so courteous to him. However, they would never ask about things that they shouldn't ask. Just from Old Man Yun's attitude towards him, it could be seen that this old fellow's identity was not ordinary. Elder Ning. Elder Rong caught a glimpse of Elder Ning, who was following Old Man Yun, and greeted him with a smile. This time, you're late to our medical pavilion. Elder Ning glared at Elder Rong. Isn't this because your medical pavilion is so close to the Yun family? I still have to rush over from afar. Oh right, where's Yun girl? She's my goddaughter after all. I haven't seen her for a long time. I want to find her and have a good chat. In the year that Yun Luofeng had left the Yun family, the entire Yun family had been overseen by Elder Ning. However, not long ago, the news of Yun Luofeng annihilating the people of the medical city had reached the Yun family. Elder Ning had wanted to wait for her return. However, something urgent had happened, and he had left the day before Yun Luofeng returned. Therefore, he had not seen Yun Luofeng for more than a year. Goddaughter. Everyone looked at each other. No wonder the general was so polite to this old man. He was actually the Yun family's eldest daughter's god-grandfather. They really didn't know what kind of luck this old man had to be able to curry favor with the Yun family. Grandfather. Suddenly, a joyful voice came from outside the door. Just as Elder Ning turned his head to look, Ning Xan quickly walked in front of him. Grandfather, you're here. A smile appeared on Ning Xan's face. She was dignified and elegant, and her every frown and smile revealed the demeanor of a great family. Yun Qingya stood quietly beside Ning Xan, a smile on her handsome jade-like face. Xaner, seeing the smile on his granddaughter's face, Elder Ning said with some relief, all these years, you've been running around with your grandfather. Now that you've finally stabilized, I can also be at ease. To Elder Ning, nothing was more important than his granddaughter's happiness. From the looks of it, she was living a good life in the Yun family. One could feel the changes in her from her smile alone. All these years, it had really been hard on her. Elder Ning, don't worry. I will help you take good care of Xan, her. The old man laughed and patted Elder Ning's shoulder. Elder Ning smiled reassuringly. Of course I'm relieved to leave Xan, in the Yun family. When the people in the hall heard the conversation between the two old men, they all felt an unusual aura. This aura caused them to be startled. Their eyes involuntarily drifted towards Ning Xan and Yun Qingya, as if they wanted to find some clues from them. Prime Minister Lu's face darkened. This girl and Yun Qingya were too quiet. Especially since the two of them had come to the hall together, they looked like a couple. No. He had to step onto the ship that was the Yun family. Only by doing so could the imperial family be immortalized. Furthermore, he believed that Princess Lingxin had the ability to defeat this lass. Looks like everyone is here. At this moment, an evil voice came from outside the door. Chapter 689. At that moment, the entire hall quietened down as everyone turned to look at the door. Under the moonlight, the young lady was dressed in a robe as white as snow. Her hair fluttered in the wind. Her beautiful face was shrouded by the moonlight, radiating a demonic aura. The corners of her lips curled into a slight smile. Even though she knew that Yun Luofeng was the prettiest woman in Long Yuan country, it had been a year since they last met. She was even more beautiful than before. Her beauty could cause the downfall of nations and cities. These words could not even describe her beauty. Fenger, you're here. Where's Xiao? Grandfather Yun glanced behind Yun Luofeng but did not see Yun Xiao. He furrowed his brows. According to Yun Xiao's personality, he would never leave his granddaughter's side. But he was not here. Did something happen? Yun Luofeng could see the worry in Grandfather Yun's eyes. His lips curled into a smile. He has something to attend to and has to leave for a while. But he will be back soon to celebrate Grandfather's birthday. If that's the case, the birthday banquet shall begin. Grandfather Yun did not pursue the matter any further. He instructed the crowd to take their seats. Then, he brushed his sleeves and walked towards the main seat. The birthday banquet began in a lively atmosphere. Numerous servants carried delicacies as they walked towards the banquet hall. Premier Lu was not in the mood to taste the delicacies. He was restless. But at this moment, he suddenly caught a glimpse of a familiar figure among the servants, and he stood up in shock. You're the spiritual sect master. Before he was promoted to premier, he had once reported to the spiritual sect on behalf of the late emperor. Because of that, he was fortunate enough to meet the spiritual sect master. But now, the spiritual sect master had become a servant of the Yun family. Spiritual sect master. The spiritual sect behind Long Yuan country. Why would the spiritual sect master be a servant here? Premier Liu, are you sure you're not mistaken? In the mainland, many commoners thought that the emperor was above the emperor. But they did not know that there was an even more powerful force behind the emperor. But now, those who had come to Grandfather Yun's birthday banquet were not ordinary commoners. With their eyesight, how could they not know the existence of the spiritual sect master? Even Yun Luofeng took a second look at the spirit sect master. It seemed like ever since the sect master of the spirit sect had willingly come to the Yun family to be ordered around in order to admit his mistake, she had forgotten about his existence. Ahem, old Master Yun coughed twice and said arrogantly, everyone has a good eye. This spirit gate sect master has been doing odd jobs for our Yun family for more than a year. Boom! Like a bolt of lightning, everyone's eyes turned dull as they looked at the old man in astonishment. Was the sect master of the spiritual gate really a servant of the Yun family? Good heavens! For the sect master of the spirit sect to willingly come here to do odd jobs, General Yun's power was actually to such an extent? Prime Minister Liu's eyes flickered as he thought about the marriage alliance with the Yun family. General. He steadied his mind, stood up, and said respectfully, since Sir Qingya is already here, I'll bring out the present I've prepared for Sir Qingya. Wait. Old Master Yun glanced at Prime Minister Liu and said calmly, we'll talk about the present later. Today, I have something to announce. Hearing Old Master Yun's words, Prime Minister Liu could only retreat. Anyway, there would be plenty of opportunities to present the present later. Chapter 690. When Ning Axayan saw Old Man Yun looking at her, she seemed to have sensed something. Her heart suddenly trembled, and a trace of shyness flashed across her beautiful and dignified face. Suddenly, a hand gripped her little hand tightly, causing her heart to gradually regain its calmness. Today, this general is going to announce a joyous matter. This matter concerns my son's life. Old Man Yun smiled and looked at Elder Ning. Elder Ning, I like your granddaughter very much. I wonder if you can betroth her to my son. Elder Ning laughed. This kind of matter can be decided by Axana herself. I will respect her opinion. Hearing this, the old man looked at Ning Axayan again and said with a smile, Axayaner, your grandfather has already agreed. What happens next is up to you. I wonder if you can be the daughter-in-law of the Yun family. Ning Axayan quickly glanced at Yun Qingya and shyly lowered her head. I'm willing. How could she not be willing to spend the rest of her life with Yun Qingya? Ha ha ha. Old Man Yun laughed heartily. My son finally has a wife. Tomorrow, I will choose a good day for you to get married. At that time, the two of you must work hard to create children. It would be best if you could give birth to 2 fat babies. It was obvious that the old man wanted to hug a child so badly that he was going crazy. Whether it was a grandson or a great-grandson, as long as it was a fat baby. Congratulations, General. This is truly a joyous occasion. The guests all came forward and sincerely congratulated him. Only Prime Minister Liu's expression was exceptionally ugly. He couldn't help but clench his fists tightly. Why? Why was it that his plan was so good, yet it was snatched away by a girl of unknown origins? Whether it was her identity or appearance, this girl could not compare to Princess Ling Axayan. What qualifications did she have to become the daughter-in-law of the Yun family? Oh right. The old man seemed to have thought of something and turned to look at Prime Minister Liu. Prime Minister Liu, could it be that you already knew that my son was going to get engaged, so you prepared a wedding gift for him? I wonder what the gift is. Take it out and let me take a look. Prime Minister Lu's eyes darkened slightly, and a resolute look flashed across his eyes. Men, take out the gift I gave to young Master Qingya. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw two guards carrying a large red box in from outside the main hall. A bouquet of red flowers was tied to the top of the box, and there was a big hole in the middle. It was hard to tell what was inside the box. Open the chest. Prime Minister Lu waved his hand and immediately ordered. Yes, Prime Minister. The two guards put down the box and opened it as ordered. When they saw the gift in the box, not to mention old Master Yun, even the faces of the other guests in the hall changed greatly. In the large red box, a young girl of about 17 or 18 years old was tied up with a red rope. Her mouth was stuffed with a piece of red cloth, and her eyes were filled with tears as she looked at the people in the hall. There was a clear trace of fear in her eyes. Yun Qingya held Ning Xian's hand tightly as his cold gaze swept towards Prime Minister Lu. A hint of killing intent gradually emerged in his eyes. Of course, the person who was the most furious was Elder Ning. This bastard sent a woman on his own granddaughter's engagement day. If he wasn't trying to make things difficult for her, then what was? He had always treasured his granddaughter dearly. How could he allow her to suffer such grievances? However, Elder Ning knew that the Yun family would deal with this matter. Therefore, he only snorted coldly and did not do anything. Chapter 691. This is the gift you want to give my son. Senior Yun sneered and glanced at Prime Minister Lu coldly. Prime Minister Lu gritted his teeth, cupped his fists and said, General Yun, this is Princess Lingxin of our royal family. Her physique is a little special, so His Majesty specially sent Princess Lingxin to young Master Qingya as a concubine. Princess Lingxin's existence will be of great help to Princess Qingya. When he said the word concubine, Prime Minister Lu was very unwilling. After all, Ning Xian was already engaged to Yun Qingya. It was obviously unrealistic for Lingxin to be his wife, so he could only make her a concubine. As long as he could marry into the Yun family, it did not matter whether she was a wife or a concubine. Moreover, he had confidence in Lingxin. With Lingxin's physique, as long as Yun Qingya tasted the sweetness, how could she give up? At that time, he would let Princess Lingxin make a request, and Yun Qingya would definitely divorce Ning Xian. Promote the princess to the main wife. Old Master Yun's expression became more and more unsightly. He sneered and said, Prime Minister Lu, you have been in Long Yuan for so long, but you still don't know the rules of the Yun family. Our Yun family has always believed in one person for life. There will never be a concubine. You'd better stop dreaming. To old Master Yun, a concubine was an existence that destroyed the harmony of the family. If a man wanted to establish a career outside, his home must be peaceful. And the condition for the peace of the home was that there only needed one mistress in the backyard. Moreover, ever since he met Qingya's mother, he had never cared about other women. Even though his mother had passed away, he had never thought of remarrying. Yun Luofeng's parents were the same. If he could not meet the person he loved, he would rather not marry. But once he met her, he only needed her for the rest of his life. If that was the case, why would the old man help Yun Qingya take in a concubine? It was even more impossible for Ning Xian to suffer. Prime Minister Lu's expression darkened. He made up his mind and said, General Yun, Princess Lingxin's physique is special. If Yun Qingya dual cultivates with her, her strength will definitely increase by a lot. I am also considering the Yun family. Old Master Yun raised his chin and said domineeringly, I'll give you a choice. Take Princess Lingxin and scram. Prime Minister Lu did not expect General Yun to ask him to leave. Could it be that this old man really didn't want his son to become stronger? General Yun. I feel that this still depends on young Master Qingya's attitude. Prime Minister Liu really didn't want to give up. He gritted his teeth and said, if you stop young Master Qingya's opportunity to soar to the top, perhaps he will hate you in the future. Old Master Yun was so angry that he laughed. Why were these officials so shameless? He had already told them to scram, but they still shamelessly stayed here. Thinking of this, Old Man Yun turned to Yun Qingya with a sneer, Qingya, you deal with it. Premier Liu heaved a sigh of relief. This Yun Qingya was still a hot-blooded man. How could he refuse the temptation of beauty? Furthermore, Princess Lingxin could help him increase his strength. With such a good thing, he would definitely gladly accept it. Father, there's no need to waste words with these people. Yun Qingya glanced at Prime Minister Liu indifferently and said lightly, just get someone to beat them out. The smile on Premier Liu's face froze. What did he just say? Kick them out. Chapter 692. What are you still standing there for? The old man glared at the guards in the hall and coldly said, throw this bastard who came to cause trouble out of here immediately. From now on, no one from the royal family is allowed to take a step into our Yun family. In addition, don't let me see anyone related to the royal family outside. I'll beat them up once I see them. A wave of complete coldness came from the soles of Prime Minister Liu's feet, causing his entire body to feel extremely cold. He knew that this time, he was truly finished. Throw the gifts out as well. Yun Qingya frowned and said coldly. Wait a moment. Seeing that the guards had obeyed the order and were walking forward, Ning Xian's voice suddenly sounded, interrupting their actions. Xianer, what are you doing? Elder Ning was stunned for a moment as he looked at his granddaughter in confusion. Ning Xian smiled lightly and did not answer Elder Ning's words. She gently pushed away Yun Qingya's hand and said softly, Big brother Yun, wait for me for a moment. All right. Yun Qingya nodded slightly, but her gaze was still following Ning Xian. Ning Xian slowly walked towards Prime Minister Liu. The corners of her lips gradually curled up into an arc. Her steps were dignified and her appearance was beautiful. What do you want? Seeing Ning Xian walking towards him, Prime Minister Liu's expression suddenly changed as he said coldly. Ning Xian stopped in front of him and smiled softly, do you think I'm a country girl from who knows where? Wasn't that right? With Prime Minister Liu's experience, he only knew of the existence of the Spirit Gate and the medical pavilion. He had never heard of the Ning family. That was why he did not take Ning Xian seriously. If he knew the strength of the Ning family, he would not have dared to do what he did today. Prime Minister Liu snorted. As this was the Yun family's territory, he did not dare to say a word. However, his expression still expressed the disdain in his heart. Since you think I'm a country girl, then I, a country girl, can make you unable to fight back. Ning Xian still had a smile on her face as she spoke with a faint smile. She knew that if she did not display some of her strength today, there would definitely be many women coming to disturb her and Yun Qingya in the future. Therefore, she had to start with Prime Minister Liu. Hee hee. Prime Minister Liu sneered. I'm an advanced intermediate spiritualist, after all, and I'm only a step away from becoming an advanced spiritualist. Are you saying that you can render me powerless to fight back? A disdainful smile appeared on his face. If you don't believe me, I can let you try. Ning Xian smiled. As soon as she finished speaking, a wave of power suddenly rose from her body. The power was like a huge mountain, pressing down on Prime Minister Liu fiercely. Prime Minister Liu's eyes flashed. In that instant, everyone could hear the crisp sound of Prime Minister Liu's bones cracking. Then, a sorrowful wail resounded through the entire Yun family. Prime Minister Liu couldn't breathe under the pressure. His eyes were filled with fear, and his body was trembling slightly. How powerful he. She was just a country bumpkin who relied on the Yun family. How could she have such great power? Prime Yun, Elder Yun said, he not, he prime, king, and, the, but now, Prime Minister Lu realized that he had been wrong. He had been ridiculously wrong. If Prime Yun really did not have any power, how could he have become Yun Luofeng's grandfather? His granddaughter could not possibly possess such power. Chapter 693. Earth Spiritualist. Someone in the hall let out a cry of surprise. This little girl is an Earth Spiritualist. That's right, I've met an Earth Spiritualist before and felt his power. It's exactly the same as this little girl's. She must be an Earth Spiritualist. Prime Minister Lu, who was already pale, felt even more hopeless when he heard this. Today is Grandfather Yun's birthday. I don't want your blood to taint this joyous occasion. If you have any ideas about Big Brother Yun in the future, don't blame me for being rude. Scram immediately. Ning Axayan raised her brows and shouted sternly. This time, Prime Minister Lu did not dare to stay any longer. He immediately turned around and ran out. He did not even pay attention to Princess Lingxin as he only cared about running for his life. After Prime Minister Lu left, Ning Axayan glanced at Princess Lingxin. It had to be said that Princess Lingxin was indeed extremely beautiful. Especially the tearful expression in her eyes, it was truly pitiful. Princess Lingxin shook her head desperately as she looked at Ning Axayan who was walking towards her. She wanted to say something but her mouth was stuffed with a red handkerchief and she could only whimper. Ning Axayan pulled out her long sword. With a swoosh, the sword light flashed and cut the ropes binding Princess Lingxin. I know that you did not do this willingly, so I don't blame you. You can leave now. Ning Axayan looked at Princess Lingxin's pale face and paused before she continued, however, I have to remind you that the royal family is merciless. They will do anything to achieve their goals, even if they have to tie you up and give you away. Princess Lingxin's body trembled slightly and she lowered her head. Her face was filled with pain. My brother usually treats me so well. Why did he have to do such a cruel thing this time? It was precisely because I was unwilling to get married that he did not hesitate to tie me up and stuff me into a box. He even gave me away in public. Wasn't he afraid that the royal family would be humiliated because of this? You'd better leave this place and go as far as you can. There's no need for you to come back. Ning Axayan glanced at Princess Lingxin. As for the royal family, don't worry. They won't dare to chase after you. Lingxin's eyes lit up slightly. She understood that even if she was lucky enough to escape this calamity, her brother would still give her away as a gift to someone else one day. If that was the case, why should she stay here? She might as well go to a quiet village and live the rest of her life incognito. Thank you. Ling Axayan's lips moved slightly as she looked gratefully at Ning Axayan. Then, she walked out of the house into the dark night without looking back. Ning Axayan bit her lips tightly as she looked in the direction that Princess Lingxin had left. After a long while, she finally retracted her gaze and looked at Yun Qingya's concerned eyes. Initially, I didn't want to meddle in other people's business. However, after seeing Princess Lingxin, I was reminded of myself. Back then, if Yun Luofeng had not rushed over in time, perhaps her fate would have been the same as Lingxin's. Therefore, when she saw Ling Axayan this time, her compassion was aroused and she wanted to help her. A smile appeared on Yun Qingya's face. I will have the Yun family escort her away. If Ning Axayan wanted to help him, he would help her this once, so what? Furthermore, Princess Lingxin had not done this willingly. She had been forced by the royal family. Big Brother Yun, thank you, Looking at the elegant smile on the man's face, Ning Xian's heart suddenly moved, and her eyes shone brightly. Xian, old Master Yun said with a smile. We're family now. Why are you still thanking him? Whatever he does for you is what he should do. After saying this, the old man glared at Yun Qingya. Chapter 694. Yun Luofeng rubbed her nose. She had thought that the old man would only side with Yun Shao, but she did not expect that when facing Yun Qingya and Ning Xian, she would also side with Ning Xian without holding back. Thinking of this, Yun Luofeng felt much more at ease. Grandfather, the birthday banquet will continue. Don't let those people affect the festive atmosphere today. Yun Luofeng said with a smile. All right. The old man laughed. Everyone, please take your seats. All the guests took their seats, but there were always some unharmonious elements. A man with an air of nobility stood up from his seat and said with a smile, General Yun, I heard that Miss Yun is very close to a guard. I wonder if she has ever married that guard. The old man was stunned for a moment, but he still said honestly, no. Even though the people of Long Yuan country called Yun Shao the son-in-law of the Yun family, the two of them even had a child, but they were not married yet. It was obvious that the Yun family did not want Yun Luofeng and Yun Shao to get married. The man's eyes flashed, and he said with a smile, General Yun, since Miss Yun is not married yet, I would like to propose a marriage on behalf of my son. I wonder what General Yun thinks. Father. Hearing this, the expression of the youth beside the man changed, his eyes filled with anxiety. This Yun Luofeng was indeed beautiful, but it was a pity that she had a child with another man. Did his father want him to wear this green hat? Shut up. The nobleman glared at the youth beside him and said sternly, Father will make the decision on this matter, you have no right to speak. Even though Yun Luofeng was no longer pure in the eyes of the world, and even had a child, in this continent where the strong were respected, if you had great power, no matter what you did, you would be forgiven. This was the reality of the human heart. The youth angrily sat down, his face full of anger. He did not want to marry a woman who was not pure. When the other guests saw that the man had snatched the initiative, they hurriedly stood up and hurriedly promoted their children and grandchildren. General Yun, I think my son is not bad. If you are willing, I can let him come to your Yun family as a son-in-law. Your son is not bad. Your son is only a playboy, how can he be worthy of Miss Yun? I think my grandson is more outstanding. Yun Luofeng's eyes darkened as he watched the people arguing. His lips curled into a smile. The young master of the Cool Breeze faction is rumored to frequent brothels and already has countless concubines in his backyard. As for the young masters of the Zhang clan and Rong clan, even though they don't have many women in their harem, they already have a few concubines. What makes you think you're worthy of me? Hearing Yun Luofeng's words, the hall instantly quietened down. The few people who were fighting over her said with some embarrassment, it's normal for a man to have a few concubines. Yun Luofeng's cold eyes glanced at the person who spoke. Did you understand what my father said just now? The people of my Yun family have always only wanted 2 people for a lifetime. There would be no room for a second person. Just this alone is enough to prove that the descendants of your clan are not worthy of me. The young girl's words were loud and arrogant, as if she didn't put these people in her eyes at all. Miss Yun, I can let my son leave the harem. Please give us a chance. The head of the Rong clan was not willing to let go of this opportunity. He hurriedly swore, furthermore, I can guarantee that he will not do anything to let Miss Yun down in the future. Chapter 695. Yun Luofeng slightly raised the corner of his lips. Whether it's in the future or in the past, I, Yun Luofeng, can only be a woman. If you can't even maintain your purity, how can you talk about sincerity? Those people's expressions changed slightly. Some of them wanted to say, don't you already have a child? What right do you have to criticize others? However, no one dared to say this out loud. Who asked General Yun's residence to be too powerful? Miss Yun. The Rome Manor chief laughed awkwardly. In this world, it's normal for a man to have a few wives and concubines. I'm already willing to let my son disperse the harem so that you won't be wronged. This was something very few men could do. Not to mention the past. A normal man will take in a concubine at the age of maturity. I hope Miss Yun can understand. Yun Luofeng laughed coldly. How can I understand a man who is frivolous about his feelings? When the Rome Manor's young master heard Yun Luofeng's words, he was enraged. Originally, he wanted to stand up and argue with Yun Luofeng, but he was forcefully pressed down by the manor lord. Cough cough. Old Master Yun coughed dryly and said, I'm sure everyone didn't hear what I said before. If a member of the Yun family doesn't meet someone they truly love, then they definitely won't carelessly marry someone else. However, the way you treat your relationship is not something my Yun family can accept. If you continue to pester us, then get the hell out of here. The Rome clan's young master could no longer suppress his violent temper and stood up. Didn't Yun Luofeng also have a child? And you still haven't married him? Yun Luofeng narrowed her eyes slightly and looked coldly at the young master of the Rome Manor. The curve of her lips gradually revealed a trace of evil. You have a problem with me not getting married. Her voice was clearly as light as a gust of wind, but it caused the heart of the Rome estate's young master to tremble fiercely. He actually didn't dare to say a single word. Patriarch. Under this cold atmosphere, a servant hurried in and respectfully clasped his hands together as he said, Clan leader, the Ghost Emperor's people are here. They say they are here to bring gifts and ask to marry the first young Mississippi Ghost Emperor. Yun Shao. Old Master Yun's eyes lit up. Had Yun Shao been enlightened? He actually knows how to propose marriage by acting first and reporting later. In such a public place, how could his granddaughter refuse? Let him in. The old man's breathing tightened as he hurriedly said. The entire hall became silent at this moment. Everyone stared at the door, their eyes filled with shock. They didn't know of the Ning family, but they had heard of the Ghost Emperor. According to rumors, the Ghost Emperor was extremely powerful and ruthless. Because he always wore a mask, no one knew what the Ghost Emperor looked like. Who would have thought that the Ghost Emperor and the Yun family's eldest miss would have such a relationship? Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, a group of guards led by Qin Yuan walked in with a large red box on their shoulders. There were too many boxes. From afar, there were more than 100 of them. More than 100 boxes of betrothal gifts. How extravagant is that? I just don't know what's inside these boxes. The betrothal gifts from the Ghost Emperor will definitely not be bad. That's not necessarily the case. Using 100 boxes of betrothal gifts is already very expensive. If they were filled with treasures, wouldn't it be a waste of money? So, I'm guessing that there are at most some gold, silver, and jewelry inside. For ordinary people, gold, silver, and jewelry were also considered precious items. However, for those who could climb to this position, gold, silver, and jewelry were useless to them. Chapter 696. Look, isn't that Yun Luofeng's bodyguard? Suddenly, a cry of surprise rang out. Once everyone's eyes had shifted away from the betrothal gifts, they landed on the man who had just stepped into the hall. Under the moonlight, the man's black robes fluttered in the wind, making him look noble and domineering. Ever since he had entered the great hall, his gaze had been fixed on Yun Luofeng and had not left him at all. His handsome face was no longer as cold as it used to be. The corners of his cold and stiff lips were slightly curled into a shallow smile. It was fine when the man did not smile, but when he did, it was a feast for the eyes. Even if his smile was so shallow that it could barely be seen, the crowd had never seen a man smile so mesmerizing. It was as if a hand was fiercely scratching their hearts, making them feel unbearably itchy. "Master, the betrothal gifts have been placed down." After Qin Yuan had placed down the betrothal gifts, he walked in front of Yun Shao and cupped his fists as he spoke. "Master." This form of address caused everyone who was still in a state of shock to wake up. Their expressions were as if they had just eaten feces. Yun Luofeng's personal bodyguard was the legendary Ghost Emperor. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. If he was the Ghost Emperor, why would he come to the Yun family to become a bodyguard? Furthermore, the Yun family had not been powerful enough back then. Open the betrothal gifts. Yun Shao slightly raised the corners of her lips as she spoke. "Yes, master." Hearing this, the bodyguards hurriedly put down their burdens and opened the boxes. In an instant, the countless medicinal ingredients within the boxes fell into the eyes of the guests. In particular, there was a rather eye-catching sapling among the medicinal ingredients. "TSK, I thought that the Ghost Emperor's betrothal gifts would be very precious. At the very least, they would be expensive jewels. I never thought that it would only be a pile of medicinal ingredients." Perhaps he did not have enough medicinal ingredients, so he brought a sapling to make up the numbers. I think that Lady Yun does not hold his heart at all. Otherwise, he would not have used these betrothal gifts to dupe her. While the crowd was filled with disdain, they did not notice that Elder Rong, who had been as steady as a mountain, had suddenly stood up and looked in shock at the medicinal ingredients in the boxes. "Impossible. This is impossible." Elder Rong shook his head firmly, his face full of disbelief. Elder Ning looked at Elder Rong in astonishment. "What is impossible? What happened to you?" At the same time, the rest of the people were also attracted by Elder Rong's words, and they all turned to look at him. Elder Rong's face was filled with excitement. These medicinal herbs are all rare medicinal herbs that are hard to come by in 100 years. "Oh, that's not right, there are even 1,000-year-old medicinal herbs. Any one of these medicinal herbs would fetch a sky-high price in an auction." "What?" Elder Rong's words stunned everyone. Because this old man was an elder of the medical pavilion, no one doubted a single word that he had said. Elder Rong took a deep breath to suppress the shock in his heart. "As for those medicinal herbs that have matured for thousands of years, I can tell you that they are priceless. Demand but no supply." These 4 words were like a clap of thunder, causing those who had mocked him to lower their heads in shame. Perhaps, even if they were to go bankrupt, they still wouldn't be able to afford a single stalk of medicinal herb here. However, the Ghost Emperor had actually brought 100 boxes over. 100 boxes, these are 100 boxes of rare medicinal herbs. Elder Rong looked at Yun Luofeng with envy and jealousy. His tone was a little sour. "Especially the 1,000-year-old medicinal herbs. Even our medical pavilion only has a few stocks, but the Ghost Emperor had brought 100 boxes over. In every box, there are more than 10,000-year-old medicinal herbs." Chapter 697. With Elder Rong's understanding of medicinal herbs, he only needed a glance to know how many 1,000-year-old medicinal herbs there were. Elder Rong sighed and continued, "However, among these medicinal ingredients, the 1,000-year-old medicinal ingredients are not the most valuable." "What?" 1,000-year-old medicinal herbs were still not the most precious. What was precious? Everyone looked at Elder Rong in shock, as if waiting for him to give them an answer. Elder Rong snorted. "The most precious thing is, of course, the sapling that you all look down on. This sapling is not an ordinary sapling, but the legendary Bodhi tree. Bodhi tree. What is that? It said that the fruits of the Bodhi tree can provide a large amount of spiritual energy for martial artists. If this Bodhi tree bears fruit and eats all the Bodhi fruits, even a celestial spirit practitioner can break through to the next level. Following Elder Rong's words, the entire hall fell silent. At this moment, everyone felt their hearts race. They no longer dared to think that Yun Luofeng had no place in the Ghost Emperor's heart. If he didn't have any status, why would he spend so much money to find so many medicinal herbs? Yun Shao slowly walked towards Yun Luofeng and knelt on one knee. He grabbed Yun Luofeng's hand and brought it to his lips to gently kiss it. At this moment, Yun Shao was like a knight and the person standing in front of him was the queen that he had to protect for his entire life. When everyone saw the scene of Yun Shao proposing on her knees, they were so shocked that their jaws almost dropped. All of them felt that it was inconceivable. Yun Luofeng's strength was indeed very strong, but the Ghost Emperor was even stronger. But now, he was kneeling to this young lady. This was clearly giving up all of his dignity. Was it worth it for a woman? Before I met you, there was no one in my life. Yun Zhao's voice was hoarse and low, but his eyes were filled with sincerity. To me at that time, all women were like white bones and all the living things in the world were like ants. Other than killing people, I have nothing else to do. Indeed, ever since he was chased out of the Shao family, there was only killing left in his life. However, I'm lucky to have met you. Yun Shao held Yun Luofeng's hand tightly and said, "You are my one and only true love in both my lives. He is also the person that I will protect with my entire life. I understand that you are strong and independent, so I let you fight. But if you are tired, you can rely on my embrace. My power can also be used by you." Yun Zhao's eyes were filled with Yun Luofeng. "If you want to stand in front, then I will be the man behind you. If you want to stand behind me, I will slaughter all your enemies for you." This was the sentence that Yun Shao had said the most in history, but it was from the bottom of his heart. Even the surrounding guests could feel the man's infatuation. "You make the world your enemy, I will slaughter the entire world for you. Since you are the enemy of the gods and Buddhas, I will kill all of them for you. If you want to be strong and independent, then I will stand behind you and protect you for the rest of your life." Yun Luofeng looked at the man who was kneeling on one knee. Her eyes flickered and her heart was filled with warmth. Her lips curled into a smile. "Feng, will you marry me?" The man's gaze was somewhat expectant, but also somewhat nervous, as if he was worried that she would reject him. Under the man's expectant gaze, the girl opened her mouth and softly said, "Okay." Chapter 698. Yun Zhao's body stiffened and he quickly rose to his feet. His large hand pressed tightly on Yun Luofeng's shoulder as his breathing quickened. "You agree?" Has she really agreed? Yun Luofeng raised his brow evilly. "I agree to your proposal, but I have a condition." "All right. I agree to your condition." Yun Zhao's usually grim features were filled with excitement as his dark eyes stared unblinkingly at Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng curled his lips. "Aren't you going to ask me what my condition is?" "I won't. I'll agree to whatever condition you have." Yun Shao has always been obedient in front of Yun Luofeng. Hence, no matter what Yun Luofeng's condition was, he would agree to it. "I have 3 conditions. First, you can only have me as your woman in the future. If you have anyone else, I will immediately divorce you." Yun Luofeng raised his brow as he spoke. "I won't have anyone else." Yun Zhao's expression was filled with determination. "Besides, I won't even look at another woman. If I take another look at them, I'll cripple my own eyes." Aside from Yun Luofeng, there was no one else in his eyes. Second, Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes. Let's get engaged this time and get married when we return from the other mainland. As she has yet to reach the martial honor rank, she could not consummate her marriage with him. Hence, she had raised this condition. Yun Shao nodded. I'll listen to you. Third, I will share the same bed with you as before, but before I reach the martial honor rank, you're not allowed to touch me. Yun Shao stared at the young girl in front of him as a smile flashed across his dark eyes. You're saying that we can consummate our marriage once you've reached the martial honor rank? That's right. Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a smile. Hearing this, Yun Shao fell silent. She was thinking of a way to speed up Yun Luofeng's breakthrough. However, that method must not have any side effects. I'll agree to any of your conditions. He has already endured for so many days, so why would he be in such a hurry? As long as she agrees to his proposal, no one would be able to have any ideas about her in the future. Yun girl, Elder Rong looked at Yun Luofeng and chuckled. Our relationship is already so good. Why don't you give me a few of your herbs? My requirements are not high, just give me 2 stalks of 1,000-year-old medicinal herbs. Yun Luofeng glanced at Elder Rong and said domineeringly, not giving. Yun lass, Elder Rong looked at her pitifully. How about just 1? Or half a stalk will do. No. Not even a single leaf. How could she give the betrothal gift that Yun Shao had given her to someone else? This meant a lot to her. How about this? I've recently prepared a pot of wine for my old man's birthday. This is the wine I brewed myself. I'll let you have a taste. Wine. Elder Rong was startled. This girl knew how to brew wine. However, it would take more than 10 years. The wine that Yun Luofeng brewed couldn't compare to something that had aged for more than 10 years. Moreover, he had no interest in drinking. Girl, I don't like to drink. If you don't want to part with the 1,000-year-old medicinal herbs, you can give me a few 100-year-old ones. Elder Rong blinked and looked at Yun Luofeng in an aggrieved manner. He had already decided to thicken his skin and ask for the medicinal herbs. Try my wine and you will naturally know whether it's good or bad. Yun Luofeng smiled mysteriously and raised his hand to clap. Instantly, a maidservant walked over with a pot of wine and carefully poured a cup for Elder Rong. Second uncle, second aunt, I'll leave the matter of receiving the guests to you. If anyone tries to make trouble, just throw them out. Ning Axane blushed when she called her second aunt. She lowered her head shyly. Yun Shao, I'm tired. Let's return to our room to rest. Also, send the herbs to my room later. Yun Luofeng yawned, turned around, and walked out of the hall. After they left, the guests were still discussing among themselves. Perhaps, after today, the Yun family's position on the continent would undergo an even greater change. After returning to his room, Yun Luofeng directly entered the divine grimoire's space and handed all the medicinal herbs to little Mo. Fortunately, as her strength grew, the medicinal field had expanded countless times. The medicinal herbs that Yun Shao had sent over could be planted in 10 batches. Chapter 700. Little Mo, is the seed still the same? Yun Luofeng looked at the peaceful ground and frowned. That day, after she had obtained the seed from the auction, she had planted it in the medicine field. But now, after a year, the seed had not changed at all. Master, I don't know what's going on either. Why hasn't the seed changed at all? Logically, it's impossible. Yun Luofeng was silent for a moment. Looks like we need to wait. If that's the case, let's cultivate the other herbs first. After saying this, Yun Luofeng picked up one of the herbs. As she was a little uneasy, she did not notice the sharp thorns on the herb and accidentally cut her fingertip. Master, are you okay? Little Mo's expression was tense as she anxiously walked to Yun Luofeng's side. Yun Luofeng shook her head. I'm fine. Let's continue. She did not care about the wound on her finger at all. She did not notice that a drop of blood from her fingertip had dripped onto the ground where the seed was planted. In an instant, the ground flashed with a green light and disappeared in the blink of an eye. After everything was done, Yun Luofeng left the divine grimoire space and returned to her room, midnight. A scream woke her up from her slumber, causing her to open her eyes. Master, something's wrong. Something's wrong. Little Mo's voice was anxious in her soul. Yun Luofeng could not think as her consciousness entered the divine grimoire space. Wah! Seeing Yun Luofeng appear, little Mo immediately cried and said pitifully, Master, the herbs, the herbs. Yun Luofeng raised her eyebrows and looked at the herb field. The herbs they had planted earlier had all withered as if their vitality had been sucked away by something. Little Mo, what's going on? Yun Luofeng's expression darkened. Her heart ached for the herbs. What's more, these herbs were given to her by Yun Shao. How had they become like this? I don't know, little Mo said, sobbing. I wasn't paying attention just now and the herbs all withered. I don't know what happened. Master, this is the divine grimoire space. There's plenty of spiritual energy here. The herbs shouldn't have withered. How did this happen? Yun Luofeng frowned and looked around. Finally, her gaze landed on the ground where the seed was buried. She was stunned. Following Gu Ruoyan's gaze, Xiao Mo could not help but stare at the book on the medicine field. The seed has sprouted. Little Mo rubbed her eyes. She looked at the seedlings that looked like bean sprouts in the medicine field and her heart suddenly became excited. Master, the seed has sprouted. Don't tell me he was the one who stole the medicinal herbs. Yun Luofeng looked at the sapling and pondered for a moment before making up his mind. Apart from the Bodhi tree, continue planting the other herbs. I want to see what this is. Yes, Master. Little Mo's eyes lit up. He had a premonition that he had cultivated something amazing this time. After Yun Luofeng left, little Mo continued to plant the herbs in the field. Then, he sat in a corner and stared at the sapling without blinking. However, this little sapling seemed to have eaten its fill and did not move anymore. It only stood quietly in the light breeze. Chapter 701. The next day. Dawn. Yun Luofeng had just opened his eyes when Qing Yan was already waiting in the room. When she saw the young girl who had just woken up, she said excitedly, Miss, did you know? Gao Ling, who had been locked up by you more than a year ago, is dying. I don't think he can last more than an hour. A year ago. Yun Luofeng did not kill Gao Ling on the spot. Instead, he had locked him up in the backyard and made him suffer unbearable torture. He had been living a life worse than death for the past year. Qing Yan had just received news that Gao Ling's injuries were too severe to be treated and he was about to die. Hence, she had rushed to Yun Luofeng's room to report this matter to her Mississippi, Gao Ling. I had almost forgotten about him. Yun Luofeng raised an eyebrow. We've known each other for a while. Since he's about to die, how can we not send him off? Qing Yan, let's go. Then, Yun Luofeng got out of bed. After a simple wash, he walked into the side courtyard. In the courtyard, Gao Ling lay on the wooden bed. His eyes were filled with despair. That day, the few people who had been locked up by Yun Luofeng had committed suicide because they could not withstand the torture. Only he was still holding on bitterly. With a creak, the shabby door was pushed open by a slender, lily-white hand. Then, a beautiful young girl entered the room with her maidservant. Looking at the face that he had yearned for day and night, Gao Ling felt a lump in his throat. It was as if something was choking him. For the past year, he had not left this side courtyard at all. Even so, some people had deliberately spread the news of Yun Luofeng's exploits to her. For example, this woman had broken through to the celestial spirit realm. For example, Dr. Tianya was her disciple. Just now, he had heard that Yun Luofeng had used a bowl of wine to help Elder Rong of the medical pavilion achieve a breakthrough. If he had never heard her, would all her glory have belonged to him now? Gao Ling was filled with regret. His intestines were green with regret. If he could start over again, he would hold on to her and never do something that he would regret for the rest of his life. It's been more than a year and you're still alive. Yun Luofeng glanced at Gao Ling and smiled. I had thought that you would not be able to withstand the torture and kill yourself. Looks like you're really afraid of death. He was afraid of death and did not have the courage to commit suicide. Otherwise, he wouldn't have suffered for a year and a half. Yun Luofeng, Jailing's voice was hoarse, like a hand rubbing against the ground. If I hadn't been with Mu Wuxuan, would you have married me? I won't. Yun Luofeng's answer was very decisive, leaving no leeway. Impossible. Gao Ling shook his head and said in disbelief, You loved me so much back then, how could you not marry me? If I didn't hurt you, you would definitely be my wife. Yun Luofeng slowly walked towards Gao Ling. He curled the corner of his lips and asked, Do you want to know why? Gao Ling nodded. He wanted to know. Seeing his expression, Yun Luofeng lowered his body and spoke in a voice that only the two of them could hear. Because Yun Luofeng, who loved you back then, had already hanged himself long ago after you had heartlessly hurt him. I'm just an otherworldly soul that borrowed her body to resurrect, so I've never loved you. Gao Ling's eyes widened in shock. You, Tui. Before he could finish speaking, the sword in Yun Luofeng's hand had already pierced his chest, ending his life. Chapter 702. Young lady, what did you say to him? Qin Yan turned to Yun Luofeng curiously and asked after they had left the side courtyard. Yun Luofeng smiled, I said to make him despair. In fact, even if Yun Luofeng had not said all this, Gao Ling would have already lost all hope. He was merely dragging out an ignoble existence now. Death, to him, was a form of release. From his emaciated appearance and the scars all over his body, it was clear that he had suffered greatly over the past few days. Perhaps he had considered suicide but could not bring himself to do it. Qin Yan. Yun Luofeng paused in his steps and turned his back to Qin Yan. Today, I will be leaving this place with Yun Shao and heading to another mainland. You will be responsible for protecting the Yun family and not letting them come to any harm. Young lady. Qin Yan's heart trembled and she lowered her head. Young lady, you've just returned and you're leaving again. Yun Luofeng fell silent. After a while, he said, This time, I'm going to look for a very important person. If anything happens to the Yun family, you can go to the medical pavilion or the Ning family for help. However, in this roaring dragon mainland, no one would dare to touch the Yun family anymore. Not only did the Yun family have Elder Ning and the others, they also had Tianya's support. In this entire mainland, who would dare to harm the Yun family? This was also the reason why she dared to head to another mainland. Young lady, don't worry, we will definitely guard the Yun family and wait for your return. Qin Yan's eyes were filled with determination as she made a solemn vow. Yun Luofeng paused and said, This time, I will leave secretly with Yun Shao. Also, I've hidden quite a lot of spiritual wine in the cellar. Give 2 bottles to Master Yun every day. Yes, Qin Yan replied respectfully, however, why are you leaving secretly, young lady? Because of Xiao Bai. Yun Luofeng said helplessly, if Xiao Bai knows that I'm going to another mainland, she will definitely follow me. That place is extremely dangerous and I may not even be able to protect myself. How can I bring her along? So, I can only leave her here. Xiao Bai was not weak, but there were many powerful cultivators on that mainland. Xiao Bai would only be at the bottom there. Yun Luofeng thought about it and continued, I have already recorded down some cultivation methods for Little White. You can give them to her after I leave. Miss, don't worry. I will definitely hand it over to Miss Xiao Bai. Qin Yan took the book from Yun Luofeng and said with a resolute look on her face. I've already given my orders. I'll be leaving with Yun Xiao soon. You must take care. After Yun Luofeng said this, he walked towards the bedroom. At this moment, Yun Xiao had already packed her luggage and was waiting for him. Let's go. Shrugging her shoulders, she walked out of the door and left without looking back. Lin Ruobai had always been a restless person. Hence, she would go out shopping every morning. But this time, when she returned, what awaited her was the news that Yun Luofeng had already left. Instantly, she hugged the book that Yun Luofeng had left for her and cried bitterly, Master, I know that my powers are too weak. If I go there, I'll drag you down. But don't worry, I'll definitely cultivate well and strive to find you as soon as possible. She wiped her tears away and stood up, clutching tightly onto the book that Yun Luofeng had left for her. At this moment, her eyes were filled with an indomitable and unyielding light. Master, I must cultivate well. I won't let you down. Chapter 703. The forest of no return stretched for several miles, and there were no signs of human habitation. Ever since he entered the forest of no return, Yun Luofeng had not seen a single person. There were only traces of spirit beasts in his surroundings. Swish swish swish. At this moment, Yun Luofeng's sharp ears heard a sound coming from the underbrush. Her originally vigilant nerves became even more tense, and she tightly gripped her long sword. In the forest of no return, the slightest bit of carelessness would lead to one's death. Be careful. Yun Xiao shielded the young girl behind her. The expression on her grim face was similarly taut, as if she was afraid that the young girl behind her would be harmed. Thump. Just as the two of them were feeling cautious, a pink hamster came out from the grass. It staggered and fell in front of Yun Luofeng. The hamster seemed to have been attacked by other spirit beasts. It was already riddled with injuries and was on the verge of death. However, the moment she saw the pink hamster, Milk Tea felt as if she had been struck by lightning. It was as if an electric current had flowed through her entire body, giving her an indescribable feeling. Could this be the legendary love at first sight? Roar! The moment the pink hamster collapsed, a white flaming cat leaped out and pounced on the fallen hamster. Master, save it! Seeing that the pink hamster was about to be attacked, Milk Tea came back to her senses and said anxiously. Scram! Boom! Yun Luofeng shouted when the flaming cat got close. The aura from his body exploded out, covering the sky and covering the earth as it surged towards the flaming cat. The flaming cat's body suddenly flew out and fell under a tree. It looked at the hamster that had fallen in front of Yun Luofeng, made up its mind, and quickly turned to leave. This human strength was not something it could afford to provoke. Now, it could only put down the prey in its hands and run for its life. Master, Milk Tea slowly crawled out of Yun Luofeng's sleeves. She said shyly, can you save her? Yun Luofeng looked at Milk Tea's bashful expression and couldn't help but smile. I remember that you're not a nosy mouse. Tell me honestly, have you taken a fancy to this female gold-seeking mouse? Milk Tea shyly lowered her head, looking like a shy wife. Yun Luofeng was stunned. Could it be that Milk Tea fell in love with this female mouse at first sight? Milk tea, let me take a look at this gold-seeking hamster's injuries. Yun Luofeng slowly walked in front of the pink hamster and examined her injuries. The injuries are very serious, but there's not much of a problem. I'll give her a stock of elixir and she'll be fine. Ever since the sapling had absorbed all the medicinal herbs, there had been no more movements. Therefore, the other medicinal herbs in her space were preserved. Thinking of this, Yun Luofeng casually picked up a healing elixir and carefully tore off a leaf. He used his hand to squeeze out a few drops of juice, dripped the juice onto the wound of the female rat, and fed it the leaf. Suddenly, the injuries on the mother rat's body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Soon, it opened its eyes. How are you? Milk tea looked at the mother rat nervously. She didn't know where to put her hands. The female rat was startled. This gold-seeking mouse could speak. In the rat clan, only the Empress Mother could speak the human language. Where did this gold-seeking rat come from? Why could it speak? This. Milk tea touched her small head and said shyly, "Just now, my master saved you. Where is your home? We'll send you back." Chapter 704. Hearing Milk Tea's words, the gold-seeking rat immediately got up from the ground, clasped its hands together, and bowed to Yun Luofeng. "Master, it's expressing its gratitude to you." After saying this, Milk Tea turned to the gold-seeking rat. "By the way, I haven't asked what your name is." Squeak squeak. "Meng Meng. This name is as cute as you. Also, where is your home?" Squeak squeak. Yun Luofeng was petrified. Was Milk Tea trying to pick up girls? When did it learn this trick? "Master." After Milk Tea asked most of the questions, she turned to Yun Luofeng and said with some embarrassment, "Can we send Meng Meng home? I'm worried about it." "Okay." Yun Luofeng nodded. She wanted to go to the continent of no return and was not in a hurry. Moreover, there was nothing more important than Milk Tea finding a wife. "Master, I love you so much." Milk Tea was overjoyed and immediately rushed to Yun Luofeng. However, before it could get close to her, it was slapped away by a big hand. Yun Shao reached out and pulled the girl into his arms. He gave Milk Tea a warning look. The meaning in his eyes was self-evident. Milk Tea felt wronged but did not dare to disobey Yun Shao. She could only limp toward Meng Meng. "Meng Meng, you lead the way. We'll send you home." Gold-seeking rats were not very strong. In this dangerous forest of no return, it was even more difficult for them to protect themselves. Therefore, in order to survive, gold-seeking rats lived 100 meters underground. At this moment, a castle stood quietly under the ground. When the two gold-seeking rats guarding the gates saw Meng Meng appear, their eyes suddenly lit up. They quickly ran into the castle to report. After a while, they saw a rat queen wearing a crown on her head quickly leading a group of gold-seeking rats. "Meng Meng, my child, you really scared your mother to death." The rat queen walked to Meng Meng and hugged her. 2 lines of tears flowed from her eyes, filled with joy and joy. No one knew what Meng Meng and the Rat Empress communicated, but the Rat Empress walked in front of Yun Luofeng in 2 steps, bowed deeply, and said, "Thank you, humans, and this brother rat, for saving me. Otherwise, my ignorant daughter would have become food for other spirit beasts. I wonder if you would do me the honor of inviting you to a feast." A light flashed through Yun Luofeng's eyes. His lips curled up slightly. "Okay." The Rat Empress smiled, "I'll have my subjects prepare for the banquet. You can go and rest for a while. When the banquet begins, I'll send someone to summon you." After saying this, the Rat Empress ordered the people of the Rat clan to take Yun Luofeng to rest. Next, she would prepare for tonight's banquet. Yun Xiao walked beside Yun Luofeng and used a voice that only the two of them could hear to ask, "Is there any other reason why you want to stay?" With his understanding of Yun Luofeng, unless he had discovered something, it was absolutely impossible for him to remain here. Hearing this, Yun Luofeng nodded slightly. It is very difficult for the gold-seeking mice to break through. They need to consume medicinal materials to advance, but I saw that many of the rat clan's residents have become intermediate spiritualists, and some of them are even advanced spiritualists. To other people, these strengths were not very powerful, but the ones in front of them were gold-seeking mice. Based on the gold-seeking mice's cultivation speed, if they did not have aged medicinal materials to absorb, they would only be low spiritualists for the rest of their lives. Of course, this isn't the reason why I'm staying. After all, this is the forest of no return. Perhaps the rats were lucky enough to find expensive medicinal materials. Besides, gold-seeking mice are known for their sense of smell, so they can smell medicinal materials no matter how far away they are. Chapter 705. What's strange is that the Rat Empress can actually speak. She stroked her chin with her finger and pondered. A spirit beast that can speak the human language has to be at least a venerable spiritualist. Above the celestial spirit realm was the venerable realm. The fact that the Rat Empress could speak proved that she was a venerable realm. But, even if she takes 1,000-year-old medicinal herbs, she will never break through to the venerable realm. That's why I want to stay. Maybe there's some treasure in the Rat Clan. Of course, there was another reason. Milk Tea had fallen in love with Meng Meng at first sight. Meng Meng was Milk Tea's first love after all. How could she not help her? There was no day or night in the underground. However, spirit beasts could not distinguish time through the darkness. Therefore, Yun Luofeng did not rest for long before a gold-seeking rat came to summon her to the banquet. Inside the banquet hall, the Rat Empress sat high up on a chair. There was a rat head pattern painted on the back of the chair. Meng Meng sat obediently next to the Rat Empress and looked at Milk Tea with a smile. When she saw Milk Tea looking at her, she winked at him with a playful expression. Boom! Milk Tea's brain crashed on the spot. She looked at Meng Meng in a daze, unable to regain her heart. Master, did you see that? Meng Meng is flirting with me, she's flirting with me. At that moment, Yun Luofeng could almost see Milk Tea's eyes glowing with love. She looked like a fool. She wanted to say, she was greeting you, but in your eyes, she's flirting with you. Guests, you can probably tell that other than me, the other gold-seeking rats are very weak. The Rat Empress smiled bitterly and said, there are too many powerful spirit beasts in the forest of no return. Therefore, we could only be forced underground. Moreover, I've repeatedly instructed that without my company, no one is allowed to leave the underground. Who knew that my daughter would be so ignorant and go above ground? Yun Luofeng put down the wine glass in his hand and asked directly, gold-seeking rats will never achieve much in their lives. How did the Rat Empress become so powerful? Perhaps Yun Luofeng had asked something he shouldn't have. In an instant, all the subjects of the rat tribe turned to look at Yun Luofeng, their eyes filled with warning. Faced with these warning looks, Yun Luofeng curled the corners of his lips. His pitch-black eyes stared straight at the Rat Queen, as if he did not see the stares of the other rats. The Rat Empress raised her hand to stop her subjects and smiled. Back then, I drank a pot of spring water by chance, which allowed me to break through to a venerable spiritualist. That's why I became the queen of the Rat Clan. Spring water. Yun Luofeng looked down and asked, Little Mo, do you know what spring water it is? Little Mo pondered for a moment and said, if I'm not wrong, that should be the spiritual spring, a spring formed by spiritual energy. This spring water is even more useful than Xiao Bai's family's holy water. Of course, the effect is also very overbearing. If a human were to drink this spirit spring water, who would instantly explode and die? Hearing this, Yun Luofeng sighed. It seemed that even if she obtained the spirit spring water, it would not be of much use to her. However, as if he recalled something, Yun Luofeng looked at the Rat Empress again. Do you know where the spiritual spring water is? The Rat Empress shook her head. I only entered that place by accident. When I wanted to go there again, I realized that I couldn't find it anymore. Chapter 706. Yun Luofeng knew that the Rat Empress was telling the truth. If she could really find the spiritual spring, the Rat clan would not be in such a miserable state. Perhaps, all of their subjects would have broken through to become venerable spiritualists. Are there any side effects from the spiritual spring that you consumed back then? Yun Luofeng squinted his eyes and sized up the Rat Empress. A look of realization flashed across his eyes. The Rat Empress was stunned. How? How did you know? Because I'm a doctor. Yun Luofeng smiled evilly. Ever since he saw the Rat Empress, he realized that something was wrong. Now that he knew about the existence of the spiritual spring, he confirmed his guess. Any spirit item with tyrannical effects would always have some side effects. The Rat Empress said bitterly, the Rat clan has a strong reproductive ability. It's a pity that I can no longer have children after drinking the spiritual spring by mistake. That's why I only have one child, Meng Meng. What if I can help you regain your ability to have children? Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes and asked with a faint smile. What? The Rat Empress stood up in surprise and asked in a trembling voice, Are you serious? That's right. Yun Luofeng tapped his finger on the table. I can help you regain your ability to have children. Similarly, I have a request. He paused and continued, that request is that I want the Rat clan to submit to me. The smile on the Rat Empress' face slowly disappeared and she looked conflicted. Not being able to have children was the most painful thing in her life. However, if she handed over the Rat clan just like that, how could she face her subjects? If you follow me, I can guarantee that you won't have to hide in this dark underground. Yun Luofeng raised his head and curled his lips. I can also make sure that the subjects of the Rat clan will no longer suffer the pain of not being able to improve their abilities. The Rat Empress' body trembled. Yun Luofeng's words hit her heart. Yun Luofeng continued when he saw the change in her expression, have you seen Milk Tea? She's a venerable spiritualist just like you. If the Rat clan submits to me, I guarantee that all subjects of the Rat clan will become venerable spiritualists in a few years. The Rat Empress was tempted. Although she did not want to teach the Rat clan, it did not matter who the Rat clan belonged to compared to improving their abilities. After all, the gold-seeking rat beside this human was indeed as powerful as her. All right, I promise you. The Rat Empress made up her mind and gritted her teeth. But you must guarantee that all of our subjects will become venerable spiritualists. Yun Luofeng smiled. That confident smile made it seem as though everything was under her control. The venerable realm is just the beginning. She was confident that she could make the gold-seeking mice more powerful than venerable spiritualists. For some reason, the Rat Queen's heart gradually calmed down when she saw the young girl's arrogant confidence. She had had enough of hiding underground. Since that was the case, he might as well fight for it. I heard from Meng Meng that you are going to the continent of no return. Up until this point, the spirit beasts in the forest of no return were not very powerful. However, the deeper one went, the more powerful spirit beasts there were. Some of them were even venerable spiritualists and above. It's not safe for you to go there. The Rat Empress pondered for a while and continued, why don't we let our subjects dig a path to the continent of no return? Although the rat clan was not strong on the surface, they were underground. The underground is our world. Chapter 707. The gold-seeking mice's ability to dig holes was very strong and fast. This could be seen from milk tea. Coupled with the large number of mice, if they dug holes, it would not take long for them to safely reach the no-return continent. Okay, you can leave with me then. Yun Luofeng nodded slightly and agreed to the Mouse Queen's proposal. The Mouse Queen rubbed her head. We have too many people in the Mouse Clan. If we all leave with you, I'm afraid it will cause a sensation in the no-return continent. You don't have to worry about this. I have my own way. However, before leaving, all the subjects of the Mouse Clan need to sign a contract with me. I am a cautious person. Without the binding of a contract, I will not trust any spiritual beast. During the time when the gold-seeking mice were digging holes, she had plenty of time to sign contracts with the subjects of the Mouse Clan one by one. Master. In her soul, Little Mo's surprised voice came. You plan to let these people of the Mouse Clan live in the Divine Grimoire space? Yes, Yun Luofeng nodded slightly. Didn't you say at the time that in this Divine Grimoire space, besides me, spiritual beasts can enter? In addition, the abundant spiritual energy in the space will also help their cultivation. If not, Yun Luofeng would not have signed a contract with the Mouse Clan. Only with the existence of a contract would she be at ease to let them go to the Divine Grimoire space. Master, what if the Mouse Clan eats up all the spiritual herbs in your space? Little Mo asked after a moment of silence. Yun Luofeng curled his lips. Now that the medicinal field in the space has increased several times, I will use 1/5 of it to pick medicinal herbs to feed the Mouse Clan. At that time, these gold-seeking mice will be under your management. At that time, you will distribute the medicinal herbs to them. The population of the Mouse Clan was too large and their derivative ability was very strong. If she could control the Mouse Clan, it would be a great help to her. Master, the Mouse Queen walked to Yun Luofeng and said respectfully, our Mouse Clan has found a lot of medicinal herbs over the years. Now that we are leaving here, these medicinal herbs are for you. In fact, with the Mouse Queen's strength, if she went to the Roaring Dragon continent, she would definitely have a place and would not have to worry about the Forest of No Return. However, there were very few precious medicinal herbs in the Roaring Dragon continent. If she stepped into that place, the Mouse Clan's subjects would not have any progress. For the Mouse Clan, she chose to take root in the Forest of No Return and often took people out to look for medicinal herbs. Even so, those medicinal herbs were just a drop in the bucket for the Rat Clan. They couldn't increase their strength by much. Let Yun Luofeng followed behind the Mouse Queen and walked towards the treasure of the Roaring Mouse. In the past few years, the Rat Clan had indeed found a lot of medicinal herbs, and the age of each medicinal herb was not low. If these herbs were plucked and planted in the Divine Grimoire, it would definitely increase the strength of the Rat Clan by a lot. I'll accept these medicinal herbs. Yun Luofeng waved his hand, and in an instant, countless medicinal herbs disappeared without a trace. The Rat Empress looked at the young girl in surprise. She didn't seem to understand why the herbs had disappeared into thin air. Yun Luofeng frowned. After a long time, he relaxed and said, after you leave, you will also need a place to stay. How about this? I will also take this castle. The Rat Queen was startled. Master, this castle is too big. We can't move it away. Moreover, it's inconvenient for us to bring this castle along. Chapter 708. To the Rat Queen's knowledge, such a large castle could not be taken away even if they used all their strength. However, just as all of the Rat Clan listened to Yun Luofeng's command and uprooted the castle, the entire castle disappeared with a wave of Yun Luofeng's hand. It had indeed disappeared. Only the huge crater on the ground proved to them what had just happened. The Rat Queen was stunned. All of the Rat Clan's subjects were dumbfounded. At this moment, a feeling suddenly emerged in their hearts. Perhaps they would never regret following this human. This human could make a castle disappear with a wave of his hand. How many people in this world could do such a heaven-defying technique? How could a person with such a magical technique be an ordinary person? Yun Luofeng's gaze swept across the stunned mice one by one. Remember, after you follow me, no matter what happens, you don't need to make a fuss. As long as you do your part, I will definitely grant you a vast world. Her voice, from the initial calm, became passionate. Her high and low voice stirred up the emotions of the rats. The Rat Queen's body shook, and her emotions surged. A vast world. Wasn't that what they wanted? From now on, they didn't have to hide in the dark underground. They could roam this world like other spiritual beasts. Master, our Rat Clan will obey your orders from now on. The Rat Queen's expression became respectful, and her voice was excited. You can start working now. Yun Luofeng looked at the densely packed gold-seeking rats and fell into deep thought. With the number of these golden-seeking rats, it wouldn't take long for her to reach the continent of nothingness. Inside a luxurious mansion, a woman stood in front of a table, holding a brush in her hand. She sprinkled ink on the paper. Her painting had artistic conception, and the brush next to her had square handwriting. It was just like her, valiant and spirited. This woman's eyes were heroic, and her hair was tied up to her waist. She wore a gorgeous red dress, but it made her look even more high-spirited and beautiful. The door was pushed open. At the same time, the woman's brush put down the last stroke on the paper. She gently smoothed the paper and carefully picked it up. In the painting, the woman in red was holding the hand of a little boy. The little boy's expression was a little cold, and his black eyes were as deep as the night. Yi. Seeing the man enter the room, the woman in red smiled. Her smile was like a flower, moving people's hearts. What do you think of my painting? Why don't we just hang it in the bedroom? The man stepped forward and smiled gently as he embraced the woman in red. His handsome face lit up with a doting smile. You can do whatever you want. Furthermore, I have good news for you. Brother Yi, you know what I want the most. What I want the most is to return to that continent. The woman in red shook her head. There was a hint of worry in her heroic features. Unfortunately, the sacred beasts guarding the forest of no return have yet to fall into a deep slumber. I won't be able to return until they fall into a deep slumber. The man's heart ached even more. He hugged the woman in red tightly and said, What I want to tell you is that little Xiao has already set foot on the road to the Wuhui continent. Our daughter-in-law has also accompanied him. Soon, you and your son will be reunited. Pa! The woman in red loosened her grip and the paper fell to the ground. She didn't even notice that the ink on the paper had fainted as she stared at the man with her almond-shaped eyes. Chapter 709. What did you just say? Little Xiao is here. He came to the nothingness continent to look for her. When I stepped into the Roaring Dragon continent, I was indebted to someone. Although that person's influence in the Roaring Dragon continent was not very strong, at least he reported to me about little Xiao's situation all these years. Just now, he also received the news that little Xiao and our daughter-in-law have come to the nothingness continent. The information he gave me can't be wrong. The woman in red took 2 steps back, her palms clenched tightly on her lips as tears slowly flowed from her eyes. Back then, when she was forced to leave the Xiao family, she did not cry. When she was assassinated by that woman, causing her to be seriously injured, she did not cry either. Even when she came to the nothingness continent and experienced countless dangers and hardships, even when she narrowly escaped death several times, she did not cry. But this time, she cried. Just like when Yun Shao was expelled from the family, she hugged him and cried bitterly. But at that time, she was crying for her weakness and inability to protect her son. But this time, she was crying tears of joy. How many years had it been? How many years had she not seen him? How many years had she missed of his growth? All these years, he had suffered too many grievances and went through countless tortures to achieve what he had today. Brother Yi, I'm going to the forest of no return to look for them. The woman in red's face was still covered in tears, but her eyes were firm. Many spirit beasts in the forest of no return hate humans, especially those holy beasts. If not for the existence of those holy beasts, would have returned to the roaring dragon continent long ago. I wouldn't have been unable to see him for more than 10 years. The woman bit her lips tightly. Back then, in order to find Yun Shao, she stepped into the forest of no return, but was attacked by a spirit beast and was seriously injured. She accidentally met Yi Jingchen, who also went to the forest of no return, and only then did she know the secrets of the forest of no return. The reason why the forest of no return was so powerful was that there were several beast kings in the forest, and these beast kings were all holy beasts. It was just that these holy beasts would only enter a deep sleep every 10 years or so. At that time, it was precisely because of the holy beast's deep sleep that Yi Jingchen appeared in the forest of no return. I'll go with you. Yi Jingchen wrapped his arm around the lady's waist and said gently, this time, it's not just Xiao who's here, our future daughter-in-law is also here. I heard that our daughter-in-law is very capable and has caused a great sensation in the Long Shao continent. The woman in red lifted her head and looked at Yi Jingchen. Brother Yi, thank you. If it weren't for you, I might have died a long time ago. Yi Jingchen smiled. It's my fortune to have met you. Why do you need to thank me? The woman in red laughed bitterly. All these years, I've never given birth to a child for you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been chased out by the Yi family. Ever since she was injured that year, she had been unable to conceive again. Even if she went to all the famous doctors, they couldn't cure her. This was also the biggest regret in her life. It's enough for us to have little Shao. Your son is my son and I'll treat him as my own. Yi Jingchen did not think much of it. Moreover, we still have Mo, and Chi, Even though they're only adopted by us, they're still very obedient, which makes up for what we lack. How could the woman in red not know that Yi Jingchen was comforting her? However, the more he comforted her, the more her heart sank. Chapter 710. Brother Yi, alright, let's not talk about this anymore. I heard from the person in the dragon roaring continent that Xiao and Feng have been gone for some time. Perhaps they've reached the no-return continent. How about this, we'll take a risk in the forest of no return and let Mo scout other places. Yi Jingchen smiled. Our son and daughter-in-law are troublemakers. If they really come to the no-return continent, Mo will soon hear about it. I'll let him pay more attention. The woman in red was speechless. A troublemaker. How could you talk about your son and daughter-in-law like that? This. The woman in red was a little nervous. After so many years, do you think Xiao will still recognize me as her mother? Besides, this is my first time meeting my future daughter-in-law. Should I prepare some gifts? Will she like me as her mother-in-law? This time, it was Yi Jingchen's turn to be speechless. He had only heard of daughters-in-law being nervous before meeting their mother-in-law, but he had never seen a mother-in-law this nervous. He really wanted to ask, what happened to your strength when you charged and broke through the enemy lines on the battlefield? What happened to your courage to tear your enemies apart? All right, he understood his daughter-in-law's character. She was ruthless to her enemies but softened in front of her family, otherwise, she would not have been willing to suffer in the Yi family all these years. Thinking of the Yi family's attitude towards her, Yi Jingchen could not help but sigh and hug the woman in red tightly. After we find Xiao, our family will live outside and never return to a place like the Yi family. I won't let you suffer anymore. Yi Jingchen's expression was firm. Even if you can't bear children, Xiao, is enough for us. He never cared about whether she could have children or not. He only cared about whether she could stay by his side forever. If the Yi family could not accommodate her, he would never go back to that place for the rest of his life. Brother Yi. The woman in red was touched. She understood that this man had given up everything for her. He even gave up his position as the heir of the Yi family just to stay by her side. Godfather, godmother, are you looking for me? Suddenly, a hearty voice came from the door and instantly attracted the attention of the two loving people in the room. At the door, an extraordinarily handsome man was leaning against the railing with his arms wrapped around his sword. His legs were crossed, and the corners of his lips were curled up into a handsome smile. His eyebrows were like swords, and his eyes were like stars. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and he was full of heroic spirit. You've come at the right time. Yi Jingchen's eyebrows relaxed and he said with a smile, I'm going to give you a task now. Your brother and sister-in-law have probably arrived at the continent of No Hui, so I want you to go out and find them immediately. If you find them, use sound transmission to inform me and your adoptive mother. The man raised his eyebrows and straightened his body. I also want to see my younger brother and sister-in-law. Godfather, you can rest assured and leave this matter to me. If I find them, I will definitely bring them back in one piece. Yi Jingchen's eyes were smiling. I'm sure I'll be at ease if you're in charge. After accepting the task, Yi Shima left the study. However, he had only taken a few steps when he was blocked by a petite figure. Big brother, why did foster father look for you? Yi Chi blinked her eyes. Her curious look made her look especially innocent and adorable. However, Yi Shima did not have a good impression of his adoptive sister. Chapter 711. Even he did not know why he disliked her so much. In fact, he hated her a little. Yi Shima frowned and glanced at Yi Chi. My godmother's son has come to the land of no return. I'm going there on my godfather's orders. I want to go too. Yi Chi pouted and looked at Yi Shima pitifully. Big brother, can you bring me there? No. Yi Shima rejected her mercilessly. There was no room for negotiation. But Yi Chi bit her lip. She could not understand why her big brother, who had always doted on women, was so heartless to her. No buts. Since my godfather didn't ask you to go, stay here and don't cause trouble. Yi Chi was stunned. She wanted to say something, but Yi Shima had already walked out of the courtyard, leaving her alone in the courtyard, the forest of no return. Under the vast and boundless sky, a large hole had been dug on the ground at an unknown time. Not long after, a handsome and callous man leaped out from the ground with a young girl in his arms. There was no dust on them, and they looked as clean as before they entered the underground. Go! Just as the two of them were about to move forward, a horse galloped toward them, kicking up a cloud of dust. Yun Xiao was afraid that Yun Luofeng would be touched when she heard the sound of the horse's hooves. She quickly shielded him in her arms and looked over. On top of the horse, a handsome man in a green robe galloped forward. Behind him, the woman in red hugged his waist tightly. A strong wind blew, and her hair flew in the air, making her look valiant. Yun Luofeng looked at the horses that the two of them were riding on, and a look of understanding flashed across his eyes. A blood-red 1,000-mile horse. I heard that this 1,000-mile horse is very fast. It can travel 1,000 miles in 2 hours, which is much faster than flying. The 1,000-mile horse brushed past the two of them and headed toward the forest of no return. Brother Yi, stop. Suddenly, the lady in red seemed to have noticed something and said hurriedly. Stop. Yi Jingchen quickly pulled the reins and looked at the lady in red in surprise. What's wrong? The lady in red did not say anything. She leaped down from the 1,000-mile horse and walked toward Yun Luofeng and Yun Xiao. Yun Xiao shielded Yun Luofeng tightly, her eyes filled with caution. The woman in red smiled and asked, May I know your names? Hearing this, Yun Luofeng and Yun Xiao glanced at each other, their gazes growing more vigilant. These two seemed to be very powerful, so why did they ask for their names for no reason? No matter what, she could not reveal her true identity. After all, she had offended too many people over the years. Who knew if these two people were related to the dragon-roaring continent? Thinking of this, Yun Luofeng paused for a moment, then said, Lin Ruobai. Not far away, in the general's residence, Lin Ruobai sneezed. She rubbed her nose and asked curiously, Who was talking about me just now? Could it be that master found out that I was slacking off? No, I need to hurry up and cultivate. Once he finished speaking, Lin Ruobai quickly sat up straight and flipped open the book Yun Luofeng had left him. In the forest, when the red-clad woman heard Yun Luofeng's reply, she was startled. She frowned slightly. Could it be that she was mistaken? These two weren't the ones she was looking for. What about this young master? She turned towards Yun Xiao unwillingly. Chapter 7:12. Yun Xiao's expression was cold. He did not say a word and did not even look at the woman in red. It was as if he did not see her at all. My man doesn't like to talk. Yun Luofeng smiled gently. His name is Yun Mo. In the divine grimoire space, little Mo pursed her lips. Can't master just make up a name? Why does he have to use his name? Let's go. Yi Jingchen hugged the woman in red and said, They're not the people we're looking for. All right. The woman in red nodded and said apologetically, I mistook you for someone else just now. I'm really sorry. Brother Yi, let's continue. She slowly turned around and a trace of disappointment appeared in her eyes. Very few people would come to the forest of no return. Now that she saw these two young people, she would definitely think of them as her son and daughter-in-law. Now, it seemed that she had mistaken them for someone else. Go. After getting on the horse, Yi Jingchen let the woman in red hug his waist. Then, with a wave of his long whip, they quickly rushed into the forest of no return. Yun Luofeng and Yun Xiao also turned around and planned to leave. At this moment, the four of them did not expect that because of this missed opportunity, the next time they would meet would be a long time later. Yun Luofeng did not expect that the woman in red before him was the person they had been painstakingly searching for. Once they passed through the forest of no return, it proved that they had reached the continent of no return. At this moment, in a city not far from the forest of no return, Yun Luofeng sat upright in a tea house. His eyes fluttered as he looked out the door. It's been almost an hour. Why isn't Yun Xiao back yet? Just a moment ago, when they had stepped into this bustling city, they had already been informed that many of the inns were full. In order to save Yun Luofeng the trouble, Yun Xiao had asked her to wait for him in the tea house while he went to search for an empty inn. He had been gone for an hour, and Yun Luofeng had been waiting there for an hour as well. Suddenly, a familiar figure reflected in her eyes from outside the window. She instantly stood up, threw down a certain amount of silver, and quickly chased after him. Long Fei, long time no see. I didn't expect to see you here. On the main street, Long Fei casually walked through the crowd. However, at this moment, a voice sounded out in front of him, causing him to jump in fright. When he raised his head, he saw a pair of eyes that seemed to be smiling yet not smiling. Moss. Master. Long Fei was stunned and said guiltily, "Why are you here?" Yun Luofeng curled the corners of his lips. "When I returned from the Yellow Springs, I was told that you had left the general's mansion. I never thought that I would bump into you here. Now, do you have anything to say to me?" Looking at the approaching figure, Long Fei subconsciously took 2 steps back. "I have some matters to attend to here. Initially, I wanted to return to Long Yuan Nation after settling this matter. I didn't expect you to catch up to me so quickly." From Long Fei's point of view, this woman must have chased him all the way here to make him fulfill his promise. Long Fei, Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes slightly. "I'm very curious about something right now." "What?" "Based on your abilities, you won't be able to pass through the forest of no return. So, I really want to know how you managed to travel back and forth between these 2 continents." Yun Luofeng looked at Long Fei with an evil smile. "This," Long Fei said guiltily, "it's because there's a beast king in the forest of no return who received a favor from my master. That's why I can travel back and forth freely."